Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials, grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Risker, can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Zarowski?
Here.
Koski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanez? Mrs. Yarko?
Present.
Mr. Yanez informed me that he could not be here tonight. He will be back for the next meeting. Council, we need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to start by reminding everyone that the Sterling Heights Police Department joins once again law enforcement agencies across the country in hosting the 38th Annual National Night Out on Wednesday, August 7th from 5:30 to 8 p.m., located in front of the police department. And by the way, that happens to be a city council meeting as well that night, so that's August 7th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. It includes demonstrations on public safety equipment as well as displays from both the police and fire departments. Emergency service personnel will speak to residents about established volunteer programs such as the Citizens Emergency Response Team, better known as CERT, the Neighborhood Watch Program, Citizens on Patrol, known as COPS, and there'll also be prizes, refreshments, raffles, and the like. It's always very popular. Children love it, so look forward to that event on August 7th. And as everyone knows, we've been talking a lot about this. We're hard at work on our new master plan that will serve the city for the next 5 years. And it's concentrated on development and our zoning ordinance and making sure that we're implementing best practices and so on. And we go through this process every 5 years or so. But as part of the process, the Sterling Heights Office of Planning and the Planning Commission are holding a workshop to get feedback on future sustainability initiatives in the city, including the city's first ever climate action plan. We know how important that is with all the storms we're getting, as you all experience this entire spring, summer so far. And last year is directly related to climate change. And so cities across the world have to take action. It's cities that ultimately will make a difference, not necessarily federal government. So we want to make sure that we get our climate action plan right, and we'd love to hear from residents and businesses alike. So you can come by our Velocity Center. That's going to be on July 29th from 5 to 8 p.m. Share your thoughts and ideas and hear from some of our experts that will be there as well. If you cannot make it, you'll have a chance to go on our website and share your thoughts in a survey as well. So we look forward to your participation. Again, please take note of that. July 29th, 5 to 8 p.m. at our Velocity Center off of 18 Mile Road. And Mayor, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the screen before you. I provide this information every year. This is updated information on our property valuation citywide, broken down by categories. And I'd like to show this because I think it's really important residents see firsthand how strong our property values are, especially residential property values in comparison to communities statewide. And that's important because our homes are often our largest investment, and you want to see your investment grow, and that's what this illustration shows every year. Thankfully, the city of Sterling Heights ranks in the top 5 statewide as having some of the highest property valuations, assessed valuations, not taxable valuations. Taxable values are lower, which is a good thing. This is assessed value, which reflects really market conditions. So you can see in this example, again, we're looking statewide here. Detroit is number one in all categories: residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property valuations, in large part because of their sheer size. When you think of the city of Detroit, they're approximately 140 square miles. We're approximately 36 square miles. So in terms of land mass, it's not really a good comparison. Nevertheless, Detroit is in the top 5. You can see their total property valuation is almost $17 billion. Next highest is Grand Rapids, then Ann Arbor, the city of Troy, and then Sterling Heights. So you can see if you look at property valuation, the total, Troy is about $8.8 billion and Sterling Heights is just over $8 billion. But what's interesting here is when you look at industrial valuation, we are number 2 in that top 5 list. And that's important because our industrial tax base and our commercial tax base helps keep our property taxes lower. It's one of the reasons why residential property taxes in Sterling Heights are in the bottom half statewide, which is a good thing. You want to be in the bottom half when it comes to taxes, not the top half. So our industrial property helps with that. But you can also see on residential, we rank 4th, slightly higher than the city of Troy. And so again, this is a reflection of the community's commitment to our residential areas. Residents take good care of their property. It's well maintained. We have a volunteer program called the Sterling Heights Initiative for Neighborhood Excellence. And that volunteer corps helps out residents who aren't able to maintain their property due to mobility limitations and maybe financial hardship and so on. And that program helps keep our neighborhoods looking good and curb appeal and property values strong. So this is a good group to be in. You can see the communities are very respectable. Good to be in the top 5 statewide. And then when we drill down to Macomb County, here again, our ranking is very favorable, I should say. When you look at residential, we are the second highest, just slightly below Macomb Township in overall residential property valuation. We are, ranked very favorably, 1 or 2 in all the other categories. So when you look at the total valuation in Macomb County, Sterling Heights is number 1. So that's a good position to be in. And again, it's a reflection of the community. It's a reflection of the mayor and city council's focus on maintaining property values and increasing them. It's reflective of our strong economic development efforts, some of which you're going to hear about tonight. It's also a reflection of individuals wanting to continue to invest in Sterling Heights. We're going to be talking about later a $35 million investment in Sterling Heights. These types of investments help keep our property values higher, tax rates lower. So I'm always pleased to report on this every year. The rankings are always favorable, and I think the community really should take some pride in knowing where we rank statewide and number 1 in Macomb County. Now, continuing on with the last item on my report, as you know, next week is a big week. It's our marquee event. We will have well over 100,000 people descending on the grounds here in Sterling Heights, enjoying an amazing festival, Sterling Fest. And I'd like to introduce our Community Relations Director, Melanie Davis, who's going to give an overview of our event next week.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, and thank you to Mayor and City Council for giving me an opportunity to share with you a little bit about the changes that are coming to Sterling Fest this year. We're going to have the return of all of everybody's favorites. We have more food trucks and restaurants than we've ever had. We've got over 100 art fair vendors. We have some exciting main stage acts every night, but wanted to cover a couple of the things that are important changes for this year for everybody. The first is we have some new rules for parking. So in the past, we've received a lot of feedback from residents in the neighboring neighborhoods and from City Council and those that live there. And so this year what we're doing is we are going to be having some no parking in tow-away zones on one side of the street only in some of these adjacent neighborhoods. So on Lancer, Dart, Falcon, Valiant, Rambler, and Meteor, there will be no parking on the north or west sides of those streets. Plum Ridge Boulevard, there will be no parking on the north side. And then on Ervil, Windy Cove, Diane north of William, there will be no parking on the west side or next to medians. Now, the reason for that is it's really to make sure that if there are any medical or other emergencies during the 3 days of Sterling Fest, that our first responders can access those neighborhoods swiftly and efficiently. And also just to reduce, improve traffic flow, reduce congestion, and really to avoid potential accidents. So that's one of the biggest changes that we're making this year. The other change that we're making this year is that, as always, we have $1 per rider per way suggested donation for the shuttles. And this year, we're going to have signs up for, parking is a hot commodity at Sterling Fest, and we do our best to make sure there are lots of options for everybody. So we have added a Venmo QR code that we're going to have posted in various areas throughout the festival near the parking, and asking for suggested donations of $5 for parking. It is a suggested donation, but all of that income helps defray the costs that we incur to, put main stage acts, those big national headliners, and some of the other things that we do for Sterling Fest. So any of those donations are greatly appreciated. And then also, we're going to have the return of the courtesy carts this year. Now, the courtesy carts are those 6-passenger golf carts. And basically, they are to help people that may have mobility issues get around Sterling Fest. This year, we're going to have 4 different areas that they're going to be stopping. We have one at the transportation hub at the community center, and that's where all the shuttles drop off. We're going to have one by the senior center that gets people to the concert grounds and the Suds and Sound Stage and the beer pavilion. We're going to have one over by the police department that gets people to the art show and the jazz and blues stage. And then we're going to have one over by Dodge Park Pavilion #1 that is closer to the Carnival Midway and the Kids Fest tent and Restaurant Row. So there are going to be 3 courtesy carts that are going from the transportation hub to all of those areas back and forth. And then one that will be making a constant circuit around the entire festival grounds. So we're hoping that helps people with mobility issues to be able to enjoy all the different amenities and attractions that we have at Sterling Fest this year. The other thing is that, as we all know, new legislation has provided for 9 days of early voting for all of our residents. And so they can vote in person at least 9 days prior to every election. Well, one of those days happens to be the Saturday of Sterling Fest. So we will have our election center open, which is located in the community center. And it will be open daily from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., including Saturday and Sunday, the day after Sterling Fest. We have provided for parking there, and we're really encouraging people that are attending Sterling Fest to exercise their right to vote by stopping at the community center and jumping in our election center. So that's something else that we've added this year. We have a few new rules for our Carnival Midway, and this is really to provide for enhanced public safety. So the Carnival Midway hours are from 10 a.m. until 10:30 p.m., all 3 days of the festival. This year, there will be one entry and exit point for the carnival grounds. And after 8 o'clock p.m., any minor that is 17 or younger without a wristband for rides or without carnival tickets will be required to be accompanied by an adult that is 25 years of age or older. and we're asking for carnival attendees in the Midway area to refrain from wearing masks. So those are all rules that we have worked with the Wade shows in the carnival area to make sure that we give everybody the best possible experience for our carnival this year. One other important thing that we've added, we are launching a Sterling Swag, kind of like a community spirit wear online portal with a local company called Wolf Dog Printing, and that is going to actually officially launch online this Monday, July 22nd. But we will also have representatives from Wolf Dog Printing at Sterling Fest on site, and they are going to be printing up some Sterling Spirit wear that our attendees can actually purchase right there on site. And you'll see some of the designs up here on the slide that we're going to have available to them. And this is just a way to celebrate the launching of that brand new Spirit store. In the future, we'll have other things other than apparel. For right now, we're starting with apparel, but the goal is to push out additional items like, mugs and water bottles and things of that nature on that store. So more to come on that. We will also have our public information booths that we always have. We will have a general information table for anybody stopping by that needs to know what's happening at Sterling Fest. We will have community tables for local groups like Families Against Narcotics, our Ethnic Advisory Committee, our African American Coalition and Community Alliance. And we will also have a public info booth for our Pathway to Play and Preservation millage. So that millage that's coming up on the ballot on November 5th, we are going to have all kinds of information there and people that are there to answer any questions that residents or festival goers may have about this important ballot proposal that'll be on their ballot on November 5th. And last but not least, we have CPR training that's going to be happening this year at Sterling Fest. Now, every year we always have our first aid ambulance over at Dodge Park in case there are any injuries or anything. But again, based on feedback that we've received over the past several years, we have added a second first aid tent near the Kids Fest tent. That's right by the carnival and the kids stage. It's the area where we get a lot of skinned knees and things like that. So we've added that second first aid tent near that area, and the fire department is working on scheduling right now to do some CPR training for festival goers during the daytime hours of Sterling Fest this year. We're still working out the fine details of exactly when that's going to take place, so we encourage everybody to hit the website to find that information out as soon as we get the details on that. And so really the important thing is, as we know, one of our guiding principles at the City of Sterling Heights is fun. And so we're just saying, hey, let's have fun. Come on out to Sterling Fest. If people want more information, they can go to the Facebook page. We have our Facebook handle up there, the website at sterlingfest.info, or they can call the city's main line, and we're happy to answer any questions that they may have. And before I end, we just want to run that video one last time to give people a look at what's coming.
Sterling Fest 2024 returns this July, bringing you 3 fun-filled nights of entertainment. The festival kicks off with a tribute to the Spice Girls on Thursday night with Simply Spice. The acclaimed tribute act will have you shouting "Gal Power." Simply Spice takes to the stage on July 25th at 8 p.m. So zigga zigga ah. If you wanna be my lover. Opening for Simply Spice will be Taylor's Story, a tribute to the global phenomenon Taylor Swift. Taylor's Story takes to the stage at 7 p.m. On Friday, July 26th, bring your cowboy boots as John Michael Montgomery brings his 15 #1 hits to Dodge Park. John Michael Montgomery performs at Sterling Fest on July 26th at 8 p.m. You can still rock in America on Saturday night as Night Ranger takes to the stage to close out Sterling Fest. Night Ranger performs on Saturday, July 27th at 8 p.m. For more details, visit www.sterlingfest.info.
Thank you.
And Mayor, that concludes my report. We look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. The next item on the agenda tonight is a presentation, and this is, speaking of Sterling Fest, to acknowledge and accept donations to the 2024 Sterling Fest Art and Music Fair by Lakeside Out of the Box Venture, Out of the Box, or OOTB LLC, and Stellantis in the cumulative amounts of $35,000. Calling back our Community Relations Director, Melanie Davis, for a short presentation. Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so we are really excited. We've been very fortunate to have a lot of corporate, generous corporate sponsorships this year for Sterling Fest. And the most recent two are from Stellantis and from Lakeside Out of the Box Ventures LLC, also known as Lakeside City Center. So we are really excited about what they have planned. So Stellantis, Stellantis is a longtime corporate sponsor of Sterling Fest, and I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that they've been contributing to this important community festival for, gosh, probably 10 years. And so we're very fortunate that they come out, and their money helps sponsor the Midway, and that's one of the most popular attractions of Sterling Fest, so we really thank them for that. And new this year is our premier sponsor for Sterling Fest, and that's Lakeside Out of the Box Ventures LLC. So I wanted to talk just briefly about one of the activations that they're going to be doing, because it's actually kind of exciting, and I want everybody to know that they're going to be there and what to look for. So they have their own branded tent coming, so festival goers can look for the Lakeside City Center tent, and they are going to have, as part of that, a vintage photo booth, so everybody that comes can stop by their booth and get a little vintage photo. And they are also going to be doing some special activations related to the new Lakeside City Center. Part of it is to recognize and appreciate, I guess, the nostalgia factor that we all have for Lakeside Mall. But the other part of it is to really get excited about what's coming next, what the future of Lakeside Mall will be as Lakeside City Center. So as part of that, they're going to have some iPads. They're going to be collecting information for people that want to be updated on Lakeside City Center developments as we move forward with this transformational project. They're going to be doing, part of that is going to be a bike path naming contest. So really what they want to do is they want to get submissions from people that would like to enter a name for a bike path that will be a part of that new development, and whoever they select as the winner will be winning a bike. So they have a bike that they're going to be giving away.
Bikey McBike Path? Is that in the running?
I see McLeaderson. I thought it was close. I think I mentioned that. And then they're going to have a QR code where people can upload their favorite images of themselves. And it could be images of them at Lakeside Mall when they were growing up or recently, or it can be images from the vintage photo booth. But when they collect all those images of people from our community, they are going to use them to create a sort of mosaic and use that as fence wraps for when the construction begins over at Lakeside City Center, because they want to acknowledge the fact that this is so important to the community, and the community is a big part of what Lakeside City Center represents. So they're going to be doing that as well. And they'll have that photo booth as well. So there are a couple of people from Lakeside Mall, Linda Gaines, and a couple of other individuals that'll be staffing that table. So we just encourage people to stop by, learn a little bit more about Lakeside City Center, what it's going to be, get their vintage photo taken, and have a chance to enter that bike path naming contest, and have an opportunity to get put into the database so that they can receive updates about the development. So we just wanted to thank them very much publicly, and say how much we appreciate their support, both Stellantis and Lakeside City Center. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Davis, and thank you to Stellantis and Lakeside OOTB. With that, we will move on to the next item, or do we have a suggested action here?
Suggested action.
We ought to do that then.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
resolve to acknowledge and accept donations of $20,000 by Lakeside Out of the Box LLC and $15,000 by Stellantis for the 2024 Sterling Fest Art and Music Fair. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion?
Thank you
Mrs.
very
Zarko?
much. Thank you.
Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, now we'll move on to the next item, which is our public hearing tonight. This is to consider the application by the CCF Development Grillo Limited Dividend Housing Association LLC for a mixed-use planned unit development on approximately 2 acres situated on the east side of Van Dyke, north of Riverland Drive, PPUD 24-0002. We have presentations tonight from our city planner, Dr. Jake Parcell, and our senior economic development advisor, Luke Bonner. Gentlemen,
Thank you very much, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Koszybski. Very excited for you this evening for our joint presentation on PPUD 24-0002 regarding the Phase 2 or Part 2 of the Chaldean Community Foundation Apartments. So just a brief overview. I will be going over the development and some of the planning behind it before passing it over to Mr. Bonner for some of the economic development and the sale of the property associated with this project. So our applicant before us tonight wishes to develop approximately an 80-unit multifamily structure. Current conceptual plan shows 82 units, which is what they have submitted for or are preparing to submit to MISHDA, and one ground floor retail suite. Locations on Van Dyke Avenue, zoned RM3, multifamily mid and high-rise district. Should be noted, one of the few zoning parcels zoned this way in the city, which would facilitate a development of this type regardless. Applicant has previously received approval for their development 2 parcels to the south, which is a 4-story multifamily development currently underway. Parcel is located in the floodplain. However, out of the 10-acre, 10.34 acre parcel, 2.2 acres of the entire site will be developed, and the rest, as we'll touch on, will be left as open space. Planning Commission recommended approval of this project at their June 12th meeting by a vote of 7-0 with 2 members absent. So the framework of this project, master plan, and just for your record here, it is the blue parcel with the green in the rear, designates it as office park and open space with development along the front, similar to what you'll see proposed this evening, and open space in the rear. However, in 2021, this was replaced by the purple boundary, which is the North Van Dyke area subplan, located in the Parkside district of that plan. This recommends uses similar to multifamily housing and mixed-use development before you this evening. So to get into this, to provide some context before we discuss the project, the North Van Dyke Avenue is a plan that was adopted by City Council and the Corridor Improvement Authority in 2021. The parcel here, if this is going north to the right of the screen, is located right here, the kind of forked parcel. This project represents a 4-district kind of town center development, encouraging increased walkability, increased development, and different types of mixture of uses not seen elsewhere in the city to help revitalize our northern Van Dyke Avenue corridor. You'll see here, the blue section of here is the Parkside District. Again, the parcel is located here with the building on front, which is already shown in the master plan, and trail space in the back. This includes uses like multifamily housing, multicultural plaza and amenities, and connectivity with bike facilities into the trail along the Clinton River. So when looking at the alignment of North Van Dyke Avenue goals to set the stage for this project, this plan was adopted in May of 2021. The property falls in the Parkside area, as I've stated, which is a purpose of bringing the community and the Clinton River Greenway together. With most of the area in the floodplain, there's a significant opportunity for embracing the underdeveloped land here and returning and receiving open space on the rear of them, which will lead to recreational amenities. The plan that you'll see in a moment is proposing to develop along the frontage and help further the cultural corridor that's being established here. One of the top priorities of this plan is property acquisition as well, which the city, as you'll see in this presentation from Mr. Bonner, has helped bring in this development. So here's the parcel in terms of what it shows on the master plan. You'll see here in 2021, it was always planned for having buildings up front along Van Dyke and including trailway in the rear of the property within the floodplain. You'll see here to the south that progress is already being completed by this applicant in our North Van Dyke Avenue area, something that's very exciting. Very rarely within these short-term goals of a redevelopment area do you see such significant investment, and we've had 2 projects approved, one already underway, and one being developed or one being proposed to you this evening, which is substantial progress in this area. Here's another view with the city's new mural on Zap Zone. So here's an aerial. Down here is the site you just saw. It's already being developed with the project you've seen previously, and here's the site here. You'll note here that the frontage is relatively barren, vacant of trees. The rear, the area that will be preserved, is the more tree-heavy area of the site. Zoning map shows it as RM3 for the underlying zoning, This includes mid to high-rise development, which would allow this development to be done by right. However, due to the purchase of the property through the RFP process and to move the project closer to the road in alignment with the North Van Dyke Avenue goals, they're opting to use the PUD process. So here's the proposal before you this evening. Van Dyke would be here. On the left side of the screen would be north. This is approximately 2.2 acres along the frontage. 82 units are proposed here of 1 to 2 bedroom units. They're intended to be affordable and attainable housing with a range of availability for units that range from 30 to 80% AMI. This will be open for lease for anybody who fits the income qualifiers. Public retail space will be located in the southernmost ground floor. There's a ramp walkway up here from the public right-of-way. As something we've discussed with recent planned unit developments, this will have balconies for every unit or patio space for ground floor units and proposed connectivity to the natural space along the river behind the development. Here's a rendering. It will be, as we've seen to the south, comprised of high-quality materials. The range of the units goes anywhere from approximately 750 to 900 square foot per unit, and I believe it's close to 3,000 square feet of the ground floor retail suite. Applicant has opted to include only one ground floor retail suite here, since there is approximately 9,000 square feet of ground floor retail in the development to the south. And until more people are brought into the area to support that retail, they believe that this is what the market would call for filling in a development of this size. So here's the development footprint to give you context on what it would look like on site. The site overall is 10.34 acres. 2.2 acres will be developed through this process, mostly directly on the public right-of-way. Parking will be included in the sides here for ease of access into the lower level and into the retail. And there additionally will be parking placed in the rear, so it will be screened from the public right-of-way. Remaining land here, as we'll cover, will be returned to the city of Sterling Heights, returned for open space and recreational purposes, which we believe ties in with the NVDA master plan. The applicant has proposed an estimated project development timeline from approval to completion following the necessary state requirements through MISTA and through EGLE for development within the floodplain and the administrative site plan review process. Since this is large, I'll just sum it up. They anticipate beginning their site work next year with a final project being completed in the third quarter of 2027. With the development of this, I'm going to touch on some points that are brought up frequently through discussion with Planning Commission and City Council, first of which is being traffic. The applicant has provided a traffic study for us to be associated with this development. We ran it through with our city engineers and discussed that an affordable housing development of this type would have a peak maximum trip of 40 trips per hour with an average daily trip count of 438. Based on the traffic count on Van Dyke Avenue at this area, this will only increase traffic by approximately 1.9%, although the city does have plans to further develop the North Van Dyke Avenue area and increasing walkability through future development down to the Riverland Shopping Center and additional commercial entities to restaurants and shopping retail will help decrease the traffic count by encouraging walkability here. However, it's important to note that the Van Dyke Avenue corridor here is under jurisdiction of the Macomb County Department of Roads. So any additional modifications past the two curb cuts here within the public right-of-way need to be reviewed and approved by the county. However, their study has indicated that there should be no changes to the road, that it has adequate capacity to warrant this development. In terms of parking, the applicant has proposed a ratio of 1.6 parking spaces per unit. This is one of the modifications along with the planned unit development agreement. The applicant has sent this parking request in through MISTA where it needs to be approved due to the funding of the project. Parking ratio is in line with similar developments in the city of Sterling Heights, particularly their development to the south. Since this use is located at the edge of the district and it is what the applicant has requested, we do believe that it is adequate for the very fringe parcel in the NVDA. At this time, there's not enough retail to support the walkability. We do believe that this is going to eventually decrease the need for parking ratio of this count. But with a site like this, it's difficult to propose shared parking because of the cut and fill on site. So we do believe that the applicant is right in line with our recommendation for the parking spaces per unit. Furthermore, We also like to look at comparable communities that are developing in more dense redevelopment areas when we look at parking counts. So in Ferndale, we see an average in their code of 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. Royal Oak in their central business district is 1.5 spaces per unit. Grand Rapids varies where you are in the city by 1 to 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. And Troy and Warren are both at 2 spaces per dwelling unit. Since the city doesn't have public parking available to rely on, and as I mentioned, shared parking is difficult at this time, we don't have the ability to offset parking counts built into a development like Royal Oak or Ann Arbor. So with the location of this and the current status of the NVDA, we do believe that we're seeing a well-thought-out parking plan by the applicant. And with this, I'll pass it over to Mr. Bonner to discuss the purchase agreement.
Thank you, Dr. Parcell. Good evening, Mayor and City Manager Vanderpool, members of council. So I'll give an overview of how the project came together and why we're viewing the PUD this evening. So most of us actually remember this property as being called the Old Riverland Amusement Park. In 2003, the Grillo family acquired this property with the intent of building a senior assisted living facility here. And due to site issues and site constraints, they never moved forward with that development. So technically, this site's been for sale since about 2003 from the Grillo property, from the Grillo family. We brought this to City Council to purchase on October 17th of 2022. After due diligence, we closed February of 2023 on this approximately 10-acre parcel. We originally had contact with the Grillo family to buy this property back in 2008. So we've had a lot of different conversations over time to acquire this site. I remember in 2008, this property was actually listed for $2 million. It was most recently listed in 2015 in terms of the highest price at $1 million. And then at the time that we began seriously negotiating on the property, it was listed at $795,000. We ended up negotiating a purchase price of $640,000. We did get an appraisal per city policy. That appraisal came back at $610,000, but there was no further concession the seller was willing to make at the time. So we thought that was fair enough and decided to close at that negotiated price of $640,000. I would be remiss if I didn't say that we asked for the donation of the property actually at one point in exchange for the future park being named after the Grillo property. But that was obviously not accepted. So we went through the friendly transaction route. And as Dr. Parcell pointed out, the site is generally impacted by floodplain and floodway due to the Clinton River. In terms of our RFP process that we went through for the disposition of this property, the RFP was originally posted May 25th, 2023. We had a pre-proposal meeting on May 31st, and we had 2 entities attend, the Chaldean Community Foundation and the Meldrum Brothers Development Group, which has a site plan. The Meldrum Brothers have a site plan for our small parcel on Utica Road of 32 units that has not moved forward. The Chaldean Community Foundation obviously paying attention to this corridor because of their significant investment that's already taking place. So they were interested in other opportunities in the district as well. The RFP process actually closed on July 25th with no bids. So we reposted with the new final proposal due date of August 22nd of 2023. And then at that time, or over that time, I should say, we did have 24 companies download the information from the BidNet website system regarding the RFP, and then ultimately only one proposal came forward, which is what we're looking at tonight. The additional due diligence that we conducted on this site through HRC, the city engineer, was looking at the amount of cut and fill activity that would have to take place to yield any kind of development parcel on this property. Optimistically, we're looking at maybe 1 to 2 acres of property could be developed out of the entire 10 acres. And for that amount of property to develop, the site development costs would be pretty substantial because you're dealing with a floodplain issue. And all of this, I'm just sort of regurgitating a memo that I had updated back in August of 2023. So the main deal points for the purchase agreement under consideration this evening is a sale price of $60,000 for 2 acres. That's $30,000 an acre. The city would be retaining approximately 8 acres to help effectuate the rest of the NVDA master plan for this area, or the Parkside sub-area part of the plan, which is active open space. As I mentioned, our city acquisition price for this was $64,000 per acre. So we have a reduction in price on the 2 acres that we'll be selling. And the reason for that reduction in price is based on site development constraints. So first, they have a soil stabilization process they have to go through. They have to build a geopier system structure to essentially stabilize the foundation of their building. That's because the soils are generally wet. They're not contaminated, but they're generally wet. That price is about $240,000. There's also the cut and fill and floodplain mitigation and management, which is another $270,000. So this is roughly $510,000 of abnormal development costs, or $255,000 per acre. So normally on a greenfield site without any of these issues, to develop a property like this is about $150,000 an acre. To protect the city from potential liability, what we've done is, in the purchase agreement, we've suggested the foundation take over liability for the entire property, so they can conduct all of their site engineering, their cut and fill activity, and when that's completed and prior to closing, they will perform a land split and give us that 8 acres back once that's finished. So the overall benefits of the project, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up, we've had the Corridor Improvement Authority in place since 2008. And as you can probably all tell, there hasn't been a lot of new investment in the corridor. In fact, I can name off, the projects that have been invested in. EA Graphics did an expansion. UTEC, which is a site developed by DiAgostini Building Company, acquired the old concrete crushing plant to build UTEC's headquarters there. Mancini Development did a spec build, which is now home to Ultimate Hydroforming. And then we had the AutoZone. So those are new construction projects. And then the first phase of the Chaldean Community Foundation project. So we're getting to a point where that project will close out and people will start living there. And so what does it mean to have an affordable housing project in a redevelopment district? And there's a couple of institutions that look at these types of developments for case studies. One of them is the National Association of Realtors. The second is the Urban Land Institute, both of which cite mixed-use neighborhood developments, including affordable housing, can have a positive economic impact in the area that's being built in. I'm bringing this up again because we're about to actually see this being populated with people, and then those people starting to shop in the area and drive more traffic and drive more economic activity. So I think it's interesting for us to see how all of this is going to start playing out before our eyes. So on the broad economic impacts of this project, the proposed construction costs of $27 million. So renovation and repair cost annually is about $170,000. Operation expenditures about $400,000. And the big number, I think, is what resident spending could be as a result of this project, which is roughly $5.9 million. So resident spending obviously then driving other retail in the area to be successful or to attract new retail to the area, especially the retail that the foundation is going to have in their first project, which is about 9,000 square feet, and plus I think roughly 3,000 square feet in the new building. So that's roughly a $33 million overall when you start adding up all the numbers, the kind of impact it can have in that North Van Dyke area. All specifically to the city, affordable housing projects like this based on their capital stack of low-income housing tax credits, low-interest financing through MISHDA, and then what we anticipate would be a requested pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, similar to what we did on the first project. So we estimate, just based on the size of the first project being 132 units, this project's roughly 82. So just based on percentages, we're assuming the estimated pilot payment for this new project would be anywhere between $7,500 to $10,000 annually. And the municipal services agreement fee would be roughly $10,000 to $15,000. So that's direct payment to the city for public services related to this new project. From an employment standpoint, obviously, construction jobs will be significant, so we're estimating about 170 or so construction jobs. You have, maintenance and repair and operations jobs, but also jobs potentially created by resident spending, being additional 51, which assuming those are 51 retail jobs. So from start to finish of the project plus long-term, we would expect roughly 200 plus jobs being impacted by this project.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. So in conclusion, we want to tie everything together for what this means for the future of the North Van Dyke Avenue. This is really a very transformational plan to revitalize this corridor of the city. While Van Dyke Avenue itself is situated below the traffic circle, it sees immense traffic counts and it attracts a lot of development. This area up here is a unique blend of industrial properties and retail ability that could stand for revitalization through new people in the area that can benefit from recreational amenities that will be there to reside within the city of Sterling Heights, live, work, and play and shop in the city of Sterling Heights. We believe that this is what our master plan laid out, that this project fits in with it very, very well. So it's a little difficult to see, but it's this forked parcel here. We're already within the short-term area of this plan, seeing redevelopment happen in the NVDA. The intermediate term here is showing something to be done 5 to 10 years after the plan is adopted, so by 2031. And we already have two applications from this developer coming in, potentially over 200 more people in this area, which if you extrapolate that out, as Mr. Bonner said, is anywhere from probably 400 meals a week, X amount of gallons of gas a week, things that people need to shop in this district to live. And then eventually you see here in the long term tying in the recreational amenities that connect to the parks, connect to our trailway system along the Clinton River, and help tie the district together. So we believe that this project sets us up well on our way to achieve the goals of this plan in a much more rapid succession than we originally anticipated set out by Design Workshop. As you see here, the CCF Apartments has already been established. There's shovels in the ground. The building here is very transformative for the district. And we believe that the counterpart, just 2 parcels up, will be an incredibly beneficial addition as well. Furthermore, to bring home Mr. Bonner's point on the purchase of this property, property acquisition was noted as something in the NVDA plan that would be very important to retain open space for the city. This photo here was explicitly listed in the city's ARPA plan, and this is what we envision being able to use the river corridor in the rear for. The 8 acres that will be gifted back to the city through this process will be used for trailway amenities, will connect us to the art walk that's being established, will connect us to the Dodge Park Trail system, connect us into downtown Utica and additional parks, and bring people from City Hall campus up to the NVDA who want to shop and dine there. We have worked very diligently with the city's Office of Engineering, evaluating the proposal from the applicant. We will be receiving their cut and fill analysis and submitting it to the state stakeholders, and we're very confident that we'll have safeguards in place through the site work being done here to actually realize these goals along the Clinton River, and we're very excited about having that opportunity. So in conclusion, the sale of this property and the subsequent development will retain approximately 8 acres of open space that will be owned by the city of Sterling Heights. This will be for recreational purposes in line with the NVDA plan. And will help really facilitate the usage of the river there, which we're incredibly excited about. Development of the recreational amenities, the trail, and the multifamily development will help fulfill the goals of the Parkside District shown in the NVDA plan, which we believe is directly in line with the intent here. And finally, the sale and development will have an anticipated economic income of over $33 million for the city. We think that this project will continue the transformation going on in the NVDA, will be incredibly beneficial for residents, helping our non-motorized pathways, and eventually lead to connection through, regional trailways and within people who live here to other places in the city. So we think it's a very transformative project. We're very excited about it. And with that, Mr. Bonner and I are open for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Parcell, Mr. Bonner. Open the public hearing, but first, Mr. Amana, anything you want to add to that?
Good job.
That would probably be fine. I'm sure you'll have some. Okay, then we will open the public hearing, and before we get started, how many folks in the audience would like to speak on this item tonight? Well, not everybody, but a lot. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with our council rules, we do have time limits. There's a 4-minute time limit for each speaker. While you're speaking, the green light will be lit for 3 minutes, the yellow light for 1 minute, and then the red light will come up. I just ask that if the red light comes up, that you wrap up your comments, take 5 or 10 seconds if you need it, but try to wrap up your comments to be respectful for the other speakers that want to speak tonight. That way we can get through everybody because there will be a lot. You are welcome to talk about anything that has to do with this project, but I will just tell you from my own standpoint, and I believe that of council, there's not a huge need to be repetitive. If certain people are talking about the same things over and over and over again, we'll understand that already. So if you have anything to say, you can use your 4 minutes however you'd like, as long as you're staying on this topic. But we do just ask, try not to be too repetitive of what other speakers have said. I'm going to start on my right, and I'll move to the center and then move to my left, and we'll get through it. So starting on my right, anybody on my right who'd like to speak? Yes, sir.
I have some pictures I'd like to show you. I understand projector. How do I put?
Yep, there,
Right
so
here?
you can see it's lit up a little bit there.
Okay. Can you get both or
If you move them over to your right,
am I right?
just to your right a little bit.
There, that's good.
Right there? Okay. All right. That is currently my backyard. This project will be basically directly behind my house. This is not normal for this time of year. I've lived in the 8300 Clinton River Road for over 20 years. I know what normal is, as I've observed it for 20 years. My neighbor, who's also here with me tonight, can also tell you what normal is. She'll tell you this is not normal. She has only been there for 53 years, so she knows all too well what normal is as well. This is not normal. We strongly believe this is partially due to the development that has already occurred in stage 1 of your development process. I did talk to engineering. I do understand some cuts are going to be coming, but I am very, very concerned, as I was hoping to have some property value, but as if I go to try and sell my home right now and show that as my backyard, somebody is going to say, thanks for that cesspool, no thank you. So I am very concerned, friends. And again, I'm a proud member of Sterling Heights. I've lived here for, over 20 years. I've worked in this community for over 27 years. Proud Utica Schools teacher. Love this community. My kids were born and raised in this community. This, again, is very heartbreaking for me, as, again, this is destroying my value. Of course, also, it's also a great health concern, friends. We have a beautiful park and bike path that you've already spoken to, which again is an awesome thing, but now it is useless. I urge all of you to drive by Heritage Park. I urge you to drive by Riverland Park. It's all underwater, friends. Again, we have this water problem already. What are we doing with developing further? And we're also we're gonna fill in more land and again, take away some floodplain. We already have a huge water problem. I am at a loss for words to understand how we are gonna make this all work when we already have a big water problem. Again, I've lived there over 20 years. I expect this in the spring. I fully accept it. I realize I live on floodplain. That's fine. But on July 16th, my friends, this is not normal. So we need to be aware of this. I want you to be aware of it and realize this is a serious problem. It's not just my property value. This is also, of course, stagnant water. And of course, there is a little thing called West Nile virus, not to mention many other pathogens that live in stagnant water. It's a big concern and something that needs to be taken very seriously. And again, I hope that we are not just a byproduct of this development that's already been approved. I hope that we're not going to say this is an acceptable cost, because that's kind of how I'm feeling tonight when I see this presentation. I feel like I'm just this little guy, this is just what's going to happen, and it's quite hurtful, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's I just want you to be aware of it. I guess I find it hard to believe that people aren't aware of it. As I drive by, Riverland Park and Heritage Park today, and it's all covered in water. And again, I see that we're going to further fill in more land and develop this. Again, I feel we have a huge problem and a very, very concerning situation that needs to already be dealt with, and we're further complicating it by further development in this area. I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else on my right?
I don't know anything about engineering, but I do know I have lived in the same home 2 doors down from the other gentleman for 53 years, and we have never, ever had the water situation that we've had this summer. We've had rain over 50 years. It's floodplain area. We have not been able to even walk in our lower backyard. It is so wet constantly, which we believe is from the first development that you had, that maybe your engineering has to look at it again. It is not healthy for the community, and like I said, I'm not knowledgeable on what should be done, but something needs to be done. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else on my right? Come on up, sir.
Good evening, Jim Bauer. I was here 2 weeks ago, and I kind of called out Mr. Radke about saying this is going to be a park, a jewel of the river, and I told him it was going to be a hidden treasure because of a 5-story tall building being in front of it. But, and he said, well, plans change. So I have a few questions and concerns. One is, if you get this millage passed and you buy more property preserved space, are plans going to change and it's not going to be space? You're going to sell off part of that property to, build something on? The other thing is, the council is always saying about how, well, we can't stop the property owners from building what they want, but you own the property. The other question is more technical, I guess. How many days a year do you expect this retention pond to be dry and not marshy or full of water? I know Mr. Yanez on the Icon Park was very concerned about a reflecting pool that was 12 inches deep. And you have to consider that right now, their plan is to go down to elevation 609, which is about 4 or 5 feet below the current wetlands elevation and 2 to 3 feet below what the surface of the water was at the time they did their survey. So what exactly is established water table in that area also that might affect it? And also, I'd like to see if you could have their civil engineer explain how, if they build a retention pond, which is basically what they're putting behind their building for their cut part, once it fills with water, and there's more water coming downstream, how is that going to accommodate that water? Okay, the volume that's needed. I don't know. I didn't study hydrology in architecture school. Okay? Also, there's no accessible access to the back of that property right now. You've got private property in the north, private property on the south. They may or may not want to sell. Things change. And so how would people that have mobility aids assess your proposed walkway back there? How are you going to build your walkway? Maybe you could have Mr. Kuszewski or somebody explain riparian rights in Michigan, so these people and everyone can understand what that means. I know eminent domain, I guess you could force the other people, private owners, to get out of their things by offering them money. But then again, if you wanted to get to it from the other side, I guess you could put a RFP out for a bridge. I'm sure you could find somebody willing to sell you a bridge, right? Okay, so where do the kids play? I want to play soccer. All this property has a slope in the retention pond. It's got a 1 in 3 slope. Same on the sides where the driveways. How nice of you to be able to share that 27 feet of water cascading down, sheet draining onto the neighbor's property along those driveways for almost 200 feet. The other thing I want to say about the kids playing, I guess they could play on the terraces up above because their architect provided a nice horizontal members in their guardrail so the kids could climb over the guardrail to fetch their ball if it fell down 3 stories. And then you have this nice convenient cloud cannabis dispensary, which is a whopping 175 feet away from the property, which would take less than 30 seconds to get to. And then I still think that you should keep it as a park. I think if you could obtain the Wynn property to the north and the Hendrickson's golf course, you could build a golf course into your park system and offer that, just like pickleball and shuffleboard and things like that. You could maybe lease it out, by a company to run it for you. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bauer.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Taylor and City Council. I just have a couple questions, if I may. My name is John Moronic. I live at 44084 Davis Drive in Utica, in the floodplain. I'm well aware of the floodplain. I've been in that area since 1982. And that property has never been built on. And a question I have for you, sir, in your pictures, you show the property level being even with the street of Van Dyke. Is that correct?
So we're not gonna go back and forth, just based on
Okay,
our council
all right,
rules.
okay,
You
okay,
can make
okay.
comments, and they'll take notes, and they'll address it.
Okay, well, I'm just concerned, based on the firm that was established in 2006, and for those that don't know what a firm is, that's the Flood Industrial Right Map. That is in a floodway and in a special flood hazard area. It is not zoned to be built in or anything else, so I don't know how Eagle or FEMA has approved it. And again, if you are gonna build such property and do whatever in that floodplain, you have to get federal government approval. And I will be talking to my Congressman John James about this. And you also have to get permission from everybody above the floodplain because you're restricting or altering the flow. So I would hope City Council will look at that. And again, we don't want to see anybody get hurt or killed. Here about a year and a half ago, we had a person die in Utica because of the flooding, because emergency services couldn't get there. So that's something else for you people to think about. And I would say to you is this: I would suggest that you make it a park like it was in the old Utica amusement park, and let people flourish and do that. You already have a complex to the south of that, okay? And I know the city wants to do what they can, but you have the whole parcel there. It's Lakeside Mall to work with. So I would hope you would do something there. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else on my right? Going once, going twice.
Carmela Lacamari. I've been a resident for 38 years in the city. I grew up, went to Warren Con school districts. I've been in front here before in regards to other numerous housings. Again, as somebody who was in housing for 18 years and managed apartments for 18 years, most of it through MISTA. My first question is MISTA aware of the problem that they have with the water? I can't imagine that they would even approve something like this. So my question is MISTA aware of the floodplains, of what's going on right now with these neighbors' pictures? Because I cannot imagine. My other issue that I'm really concerned about is that there is, if I read correctly, there's a reduction of 72 feet from the front. That means that that building is literally feet away from Van Dyke. That area, I'm sure you guys all live here, you guys know how it is. It is congested constantly. You can barely make a left on Canal because it goes past it, especially with the two dispensaries. The cones had to come down because people were hitting it and not paying attention to it. I'm grateful that they got the traffic report done, but I can guarantee you it's more than 1.9%. I take that route 3 times a day because of my job. It takes me 20 minutes to get from there to my house at 15 in Van Dyke because of that. Longer because of the construction that's going on at M59 also now. If I remember correctly that I read, the recreation area is a 40-foot by 20-foot. Do you honestly think that that's enough space for their children with the building being so close to Van Dyke? We've already had numerous kids get hit. 15 Mile, which was supposed to be the middle median to protect, child was just recently hit. I understand that we are, again, I'm all for housing, especially finally affordable housing is great, but not at the expense of the taxpayers' dollars and not at the expense of people's lives and it being close. I, as a homeowner, have to go by regulations, and so do they. To sell it for what you just sold it for because they have an expense, that is their problem, not ours and not this council's. They want to build, they have to fork over that money. I had an issue with the city on a tree that ruined my property 15 months ago that cost me $20,000. And now it's going to cost me an additional $800. I have to pay that because that's my responsibility. That is their responsibility to fix whatever they have to do to build on that. So at this point in time, I'm grateful that they're wanting to come in. to build affordable housing, but that is not the right place. You're wanting to pass the millage come November to purchase green space, and you have it physically right there. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to put another housing there. It needs to go. You've got Lakeside, that's great, that's fantastic. Another 3,000 units there. You've got 14 in Van Dyke, across the street at the Walmart. There's 3 or 4 buildings that are empty. That's great space to put an apartment building there, enough there to put there. Not in this location. It's too congested. People are gonna get injured trying to cross to go to the dispensary and go back when they're not capable to do that. So unless you're putting a crosswalk there or traffic light, it's not, I'm sorry, but this is not the place for it. That's it.
Okay, anyone else on my right? If not, I'll move to the center portion. Yes, ma'am?
Good evening, members of council, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Patricia Sutton. I realize my prepared remarks may duplicate some of the other speakers, but obviously those are points that bear repeating. Currently, this land is absorbing water and slowing its release into the Clinton River. The proposed development is going to seal that land with concrete, impervious surfaces that will send storm runoff even more quickly into the Clinton River, overwhelming it and increasing the flood risk, as we've seen from that gentleman's pictures, to areas even further downstream, like Riverland Apartments, which already has a flooding problem. And what about the new homes that were built on Clinton River Road, not far south from Henry Ford II? Not only will this be overwhelmed with water, it will be overwhelmed with pollution runoff, because you are going to have runoff from the parking lot. Cars leak fluids, people leave their trash. You're going to destroy this natural space that helps to control the runoff of excess water and leads to the degradation of the watershed by ways of including erosion and pollution, which brings us to the impact on our green corridor. When my family moved here over 50 years ago, one of the highlights was the balance of development to green space. During this time, I have enjoyed the parks and the trails immensely. They've been a consistent source of enjoyment. But this development will negatively affect that experience and that balance of development and nature, especially as I see that one graphic with this intermediate view showing possibly more development down the road in a few years. If you approve another destruction of green space, you are tipping those scales of balance into a direction that will not be easily reversed. And your decision today, ladies and gentlemen of council, will have far-reaching impacts. If you choose destruction, and the consequences include even worse flooding than we've seen from other residents, flooding damage downstream, all I can say is, I hope that those impacted residents get some darn good lawyers. And remember that you were advised against this by the residents and went ahead and did it anyway. Good night.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else from the center portion?
See what's going on around here. Listen, I don't know, I gotta talk to you guys. You guys, this is a Chaldean thing. Are you guys connected with the one on 15? That's what I'd like to know, because that went up pretty fast. I'm next to the Islams. That's taken months. What's the price of the units if you do get it built? And this parking, You always say 1.5. Well, what's the half? Is that a half a car? Because Chaldeans, they got a hell of a family, and man, they got cars, you know. They're all cars. The parking there ain't gonna be bad. And that creek, I think it's a creek, I don't know, is that the Clinton River? Because it floods all the time. The park across the street in Utica, that used to be underwater. And we used to swing and die right in the water. It was right there. We were kids, pollution, we didn't know, you know. But, yeah, I want to know too, if you do get it built, is there going to be elevators? Because it's 4 floors. And you're going to have anything for handicapped people. And, well, that's about it. Oh, the 1.5 for the cars, you probably can get a kayak or something, or, I don't know.
I'll get you next, okay?
Good evening, Mary Marcinak. You all know who I am. Mr. Vanderpool, I think your report regarding the housing, that we're so good on housing, but is that residential housing or is that apartments? There's a difference because we keep getting apartments jammed down our throats all the time here in Sterling Heights. Well, as you know, I live on Van Dyke. And I could tell you Dr. Purcell's accounting of vehicles is not correct. Sometimes I can't get out of my drive, and sometimes I can't get in my drive. And furthermore, in regards to this particular piece of property, this is a floodplain. I don't know if any of you remember the flood decades ago where the Van Dyke was closed. Utica, the senior center in Utica, the people had to be evacuated on the Utica side. The amusement park was flooded. I mean, to have Van Dyke closed, I mean, come on. So I think this is a bad mistake. I'm sorry, it is a mistake. I haven't been here in such a long time. I'd rather be home watching paint dry, to be honest with you. But I have to come and speak regarding this issue because it's going to have a direct impact on the businesses and the residents of this community. Van Dyke is, I can't even tell you the traffic. Dr. Purcell, I don't understand where you got your traffic count from, or Luke. And not only that, you told us that there's going to be $33,000 worth of people visiting their restaurants. Are you kidding me? You know what today's economy is? They can't even afford a McDonald's. I mean, come on. Please, I ask you this. Please postpone this project until you have one completed and occupied, because you can better judge the impact that's going to be on Van Dyke. You can't do this. You are hurting our city. You're hurting my city. And as you know, been there, done that. This is not my first rodeo. So as far as master plans and all that good stuff, it's not carved in stone. It can be changed. So I don't want to hear any more malarkey from elected officials and administration. And furthermore, we are the 4th largest city in this hospital. I mean, in Michigan. God, I haven't been this nervous in a long time. Anyway, we are the 4th largest city in Michigan. And I'm going to tell you, the question that you have to ask, because there are some of you sitting up here that have the attitude that you were elected to look at all of us at the city as a whole. Well, you're not my mom, you're not my dad, so you can't protect me and you can't tell me what to do. And I'm glad that you're watching out for me. But I'm going to tell you, councils and administration have made poor decisions in the past. And one of them is, the question that I want you to research is why we, the 4th largest city in Michigan, do not have our own hospital. And I'll give you a hint. The council back then and the city administration did not want to give up tax-exempt property on DeQuinder. That is why Troy Beaumont is in Troy and not in Sterling Heights. So make the right decision and vote to postpone or to actually deny this request for rezoning or for the building. And furthermore, is Grillo building it? Because I tell you, he's not building it. Thank God, because his buildings put the UGG in ugly. Thank you.
Hi, I'm not nearly as funny as she is, but my name's Kathy
Well,
Shaner.
humor is, it's
a
all in
good
the eye of the
lightener.
beholder, right?
Absolutely. Well,
Seemed funnier on that side than this side, but
I
it was-
bet.
Mary's got some good humor in her, so, go ahead.
So mine too, it's pre-made and it does hit on a couple of things, but it also hits on a couple of different things. And so I'm not in favor of the city selling that amusement park for more apartments. You know, approval from the city to buy that land, as you guys mentioned, was just a few years ago, and it was supposed to be for a green space. However, if they only build on 2 acres, you've got 8 acres of green space. How are any of us going to get to it? You've got the parking lot, you've got the building, there's no easy access, there's no way for people to walk there unless they live in the building to be able to go. And again, we already talked about the floodplain, so that's good. In addition of another apartment building, the addition is not needed. You, the city council, have already passed the Icon proposal for micro apartments at 14 and Mound. The block at 15 and Van Dyke is opening, and the apartments in the Hobby Lobby parking lot are recent as well. If there truly is a need for subsidized apartments to exist, there are several locations available that would not require green spaces to be affected. There are empty lots, or empty storefronts or land available with limited trees at 15 in Van Dyke, 16 in Van Dyke, the former Comcast building on Van Dyke, the old Abuelo's Restaurant at Lakeside Circle, the empty Chili's, Mongolian Barbecue, the old Dooley's, the old McGahey Elementary School. All of that is open property. It's not going to affect trees and green space, and you can still use the Van Dyke property for a park. And not that Sterling Heights wants to hear this, but there are 2 acres across Utica at 59 and 53 that they could build without affecting anything. They're selling that property. So if they really wanted to be in the area, it's just across Hall Road. Contrary to the Planning Commission ideas, residents who have subsidized housing are generally not in need of car charging stations for their electric cars. They're subsidized housing. They don't have a lot of disposable income. They're going to be lucky to pay their bills. I'm a social worker, and I work with people all the time that don't have any money. And yes, we need subsidized housing, but this is not the proper space for it, and there's nothing that they're going to add, there's not enough that they're going to add financially to that area. As for additional businesses, we all know that Sterling Heights has an abundance of strip malls that have vacant storefronts, fast food chains that are closing down or operating with limited hours due to a shrinking workforce, and the closing of Lakeside Mall, although the property is being redeveloped. Back to green spaces. In July of 2022, Deanna Koski was cited in the Sterling Heights Sentry of indicating that the city was trying to preserve green spaces. And in the same article, Mayor Taylor, you also had indicated that being more residential housing, being for more residential apartments, and being for more residents in general doesn't mean you have to say yes to every proposal that comes before you. And with that, I urge you to not approve this proposal.
Mr. Nelson. You can come up, Mr. Nelson.
Ken Nelson, I hope I can follow Mary Marcinet's act. Pretty good. Anyway, I would like to continue with what I put out this afternoon about the 2 purchase agreements, one from 2022 and the other one from 2024. It sounds to me with the explanation, I find it very, very hard to believe that we're going to have an impact from this 82 units of $33 million to the city of Sterling Heights. But what I think I heard was we tried something and it didn't work. And maybe I misunderstood. I've been a realtor for over 35 years. And so I'm very aware of the purchase agreements, what was in the purchase agreement. The purchase agreement where the city spent $640,000 was 9 pages long. when we turned around and sold the property back to CCF, Chaldean Community Foundation, it was 26 pages. So there was built in there all kinds of get-outs. Should have gotten out. I did a lot of walking during the last 2 weeks along the sidewalk. Scares the heck out of me. If you ever walked along that bridge that's right next to Van Dyke going over the river, it's scary. Water was back behind the Chaldean Development Number 1. There is a lake forming right now that I believe these people were talking about. I have my stepson lives on Davis in Utica, and he gets flooded out every time we get 2 inches of rain. A lot of that is because of the fill that we're doing on this side. We don't need to do what we're doing. I think we're just book smart, book stupid, really. In this development, we've got the North Van Dyke Authority. We've got the North Van Dyke this, that. If you read it, it's nice and pretty and it's very colorful, but it's not going anywhere. Okay, I think that was admitted earlier. And that needs to be looked at again, and it needs to be common sense development in this city. Common sense says we don't build another apartment until the other apartments are all completely filled and built. We don't want apartments. I put out a message about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we lit up Facebook. People that are not happy with you guys right now. So I'll say, just keep it up, and I would like to hear more about the reality of this whole North Van Dyke area. I happened to see Z-Bart used to be in Sterling Heights. Now it's over in Utica, right across from this site. They moved out. I guess you guys kind of pushed them out. So, good luck.
All right, thank you, Ken.
Mark Shireman, 44638 Meringue Drive, Sterling Heights. You people should be ashamed of yourself the way you put the setbacks on this first building that you put up. I walk, I ride my bike, and I drive along Van Dyke. It won't be long, you're going to have a covered walkway because of a frying pan falling on somebody that's underneath this unit. This is ridiculous. This next building is going to have the same problems. As far as this park in the backyard, it was just mentioned, when you're walking or riding bike over the bridge on Van Dyke, the cars are screaming by you going 45 or 50 mile an hour. Mr. Police Officers, you can't do anything about it, but Utica can.
Mr. Mayor, could you have the speaker
Yeah,
address the council, please?
Please address your comments to the council,
Okay.
not to our police officers. Thank you.
So, thank you. But our police officers can't slow the cars down because of that being in Utica. But to get into this park area behind, you're going to have a bridge or come around Riverland Drive, and then you got to maneuver through the parking lot to get, or the entrances and exits of the parking lots. Very dangerous for the people coming and going into your supposedly park. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Jerry Shea. Haven't been here in a long time. I want to thank the former resident of Springfield Township for asking me, they said, what's happening in Sterling Heights? I said, what do you mean? Well, what's that building behind Riverland? It's an eyesore. I says, yeah, I know, it's unbelievable. Now you want to build another eyesore right down the road from it. I want to find out what's going to happen with the driving range. Is the city planning on to buy that property and to make a buffer to get to the back part of this property? Or is Grillo or whoever going to buy the driving range? Because they're going to be landlocked. I can't see them keeping their property. And that floods too. I walked both parcels and there was a lot of water. I've been running into a lot of residents outside the city, and they moved because they feel the city's just one big cement city. They can't believe not just the apartments, but every piece of green space, you're putting something on. You want a master plan, you don't have a master plan. You don't even plan. You're not going to make a Plymouth or Northville on that part of Van Dyke. You're not going to have a walkable city. There's too much traffic, and this is an older community. What seniors are going to be walking up and down that part? And I want to know, the first development behind Riverland, that shopping center needs to be fixed up. That development, this development, where can residents sign up to get an apartment? Is there a waiting list? Or how can they get involved getting there? I hear the name, the Chaldean Foundation and this. Is it just open to Chaldeans? Or explain what's the process of if someone wants to live there? If you can explain that to me, this is a really bad decision. I didn't want to come to this meeting. I wasn't even going to come down here. But I got tired of the residents asking me, and I said, wow, I got to come down here and speak up. Because you know what? They're speaking with their feet. They're moving. And I can tell you that right now. They're moving to Bruce Township. They're going north. They're going to southern Lapeer. So you're going to get a lot of transit residents here. And I'm also talking to other residents. When they sell their houses, they're keeping their houses, but they're renting them. They have income and stuff. So this is a bad mistake. And I have to agree with Mary Marcinick. The Grillo developments are ugly.
Good to see you again, Jerry. Hope you're well. Anybody else in the middle? I'll take you in the front and I'll move my way back.
Never been to a council meeting before, and I'm a little bit nervous. Every time I drive down Van Dyke, I see these big colored towers that say creativity, innovation, progressive. I haven't seen that in our city. Building more buildings, more apartments and parking lots, more asphalt parking lots is not about innovation. It's not being about creative. It's not being progressive. Ugly buildings are not progressive. Take that land and really do something good with it. Build a educational park with elevated walkways to teach everybody what a floodplain and a wetlands is. Instead of taking it away so nobody knows what a natural environment is, how is it being progressive to ruin it? What's progressive about ruining something beautiful? That's all I have to say.
Hello, council. Thanks for hearing us. My name is Joe Walecki, 8400 Clinton River Road. My backyard was on the little satellite picture, colored in fun. I have some concerns. Obviously, everyone mentioned the flooding. In my particular part of the floodplain, it's not so much standing water. It's moving at whatever rate the river's flowing at that day. My next concern is also, I followed the NVDA development pretty closely. I participated in the community input sections. I'm kind of rooting for it because I thought, oh man, maybe we do get a cool walkable city and it's going to be right in my backyard. I'm into that. I don't know that this was the exact idea for Parkside, or at least what I thought it should be, or what the master plan kind of suggested. It didn't seem to be in keeping with the Visioning 2040 that you guys worked so hard on. I'm also a little concerned with the variances, and I was able to bring some of this up at the planning meeting, and I don't know, we'll maybe just go into them. They had mentioned that the cut and fill probably would work. They did a lot of engineering studies and, Eagle would be on them, but I do know that Eagle has not been able to catch dam bursts or waste discharges, things like that. I don't know that they're totally reliable on this. They can't be like the one thing looking out for us. Also, Site 1, I know it was recommended partially because they had done such good work at the Site 1, and, they were trusted to work on Site 2. That's not proven yet. That site's not done. Frankly, it looks like it might have stalled for the last month or so. I haven't seen a lot of movement. I'm not inside the building, so maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. The NVDA called this a rec site, light commercial, light residential. I feel like the footprint of this building's just far too big. I kind of thought we'd see more like the live-work kind of smaller townhouses with a business below and a couple apartments above, not just a major block house of apartments. 2040 mentions community enrichment and green space. I thought those kind of went together, and that's already here. Variances. One of the variances is not putting enough commercial space into this building. I know that they said that that's not good for right now, that the community won't support that right now, but it might one day. But if it's not there now, it won't be later. They're not going to take out apartments to put in a business that everyone might use instead of just a couple of specialty people. A few miscellaneous things to bring up here. A lot of this is going to be grant work. I worked under a SAFER grant for a while. I know there's a lot of rules and timelines that go into that. Rushed work is not good work. Work on site stalled. Oh, traffic patterns, we've already discussed that at end. Was this offered at $50K to all the other people who might have proposed developing this, or was this just like a special deal made after the fact? Another concern is the type of businesses mentioned at the Planning Commission were like pharmacies and urgent cares, and the developer had mentioned that they were trying to steer away from that, but what's to say they don't just dive into that and let that be the commercial that they get there? Oh, that's the end of my list. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Miss in the back?
Hello, my name's Teresa and I'm a shopaholic, so I'm going to speak to what I know. I had a question if they're going to be talking anymore afterwards about this. If I wrote my numbers down right, it sounds like we do have the potential residential spend of 5.9 million. And I wasn't sure if those numbers were broken down correctly. Would that be contributing to the economic impact of small businesses, retail, restaurants, like their disposable income, or is that also taking into consideration the rent and utilities? Because when I do the math, it sounds like it's potential of $72,000 per unit, is what I came up with for my math. So I was just curious how that's broken down further, because I'm very interested in what happens with Lakeside moving forward. And I would love to see more small businesses thrive and more individual cafes and things like that. So it sounds like if those numbers were correct, it would be a benefit to what's going to happen down the road with Lakeside as well. So I was just curious to hear more information about residential spend. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Miss. Anybody else in the center portion? Yes, ma'am. Okay, Steve Beelan's going to come up instead.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Pretty much what I'm here about, almost every point was talked about already. I mean, the things that I found out is, the study for the traffic study was done in May 2024. Obviously, with Phase 1, that hasn't impacted the area at all because it hasn't been there. I know for a fact that one of the reasons why the VFW moved out of that area was because trying to get into the old Social Security building was almost impossible. I couldn't tell you the number of times where I've seen people almost hit in that area trying to get in or out driveways. I know that they're saying their study is saying, whatever it is, 22,000 or whatever. I looked at the things, they're basing it on 55 miles an hour. Well, you figure how many cars are there if it is, and it's not 55 miles an hour. Over there, it's 45. So their study is very, very skewed. I'll tell you that right now. I know one of the things that were brought up numerous times were, well, I have a waiting list of 500 people waiting for those apartments. Okay? Well, go to Chaldean Foundation. How many can I put my name on being 501st? I was told, there is no list. Which is it? Is it 500 or is it none? Then the Chaldean Foundation secretaries are telling me, well, go on the website, and you go on the website, and the website says, coming soon. There should be a waiting list right now, but I don't think there is one. I think what it is that they're being selective of who they're going to put in there. I've been in that area for 30-some years. I would love to be in there for another 20 years, and basically have my final house. I can't say that, because with the increase of traffic, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but with the increase of traffic, there's accidents all over. I know I've seen deer population increase over there, and I've seen a couple pretty good accidents with the deers being hit by the big Escalades over there. There was one Escalade that took out a deer, and basically Escalade took off, and since VFW was there, we had to take care of the carcass because the city didn't want to do anything. So, what are you doing in terms of the wildlife that's repopulating in that area? That's a big, big problem. I've seen in my neighborhood, I just seen a hawk the other day. I've seen foxes, I've seen deer roaming down the street. I mean, we're just right across on Kidley. And like I say, the growth is there. And you got to do a happy balance with nature, and I don't think this is doing it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, good afternoon. Firstly, I want to say that I support apartments. I believe we should be keeping people in the cities. If you've lived in Macomb County over the past 20, 30 years, like I have, you've noticed urban sprawl. My dad lived off of 26 Mile Road, and I've watched all the development over the years in that area, and that was taking over valuable wildlife habitat. So I am questioning, like the others, are there other development opportunities, vacant buildings or properties that could be used instead of this area? The other thing I wanted to mention was I'm questioning the pricing. My cousin lives in a one-bedroom in Sterling Heights and only pays $748 per month, where it said in the paper that they would be charging $1,450 per month. That's almost double what he's paying. So I guess, what are you offering that people are going to be paying this higher price? And then hearing those numbers, these apartments are keeping your people, from building home equity and wealth. So please consider ideas that promote business people to promote building starter homes or more affordable permanent housing. I don't believe this is sustainable. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Miss. Anyone else in the center portion? Not, I'll move to my left. Anyone on the left? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Steve McKay. I live at 42940 Utica Road, 3 houses north of the Nature Center. I've been there 38 years. Been a resident of Sterling Heights since 1969. And for the most part, I can say I've been very proud to be a resident here. A lot of things go really well in our city. A lot of things don't go really well in other cities. So I will just start out by saying that one of the problems that happened, and we should look to Utica, when they put that Utica Senior Center in, that was during a period of time when I was the coordinator for Macomb County for the Clinton River Authority. I spent 11 years cleaning this river before any of the cities supported it. Our old mayor from 69, Al Martin, was the president of that, and I was coordinator of Macomb County. I spent a lot of my time when I was younger in the river. I watched that complex go up. Sure, they raised the complex up. They put it on piers. Yep, worked great. They paved over the parking lot, 1.5 spaces, whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me. All I know is that ground cannot absorb the water now. And like somebody else mentioned, people got trapped in high water. I remember that. They had a rescue. Somebody else mentioned when Van Dyke was underwater. That was 2004. Kroger, where Zap Zone is now, had 2 feet of water in it, in the store. Imagine the parking lots of complex number 1 and proposed complex number 2 when all those cars flood. Just like the cars have flooded in Riverland Apartments, the cars have flooded there. Now, my house, my property's higher. The 2 houses that are north of the nature center, they're lower. Like I say, I sit in my house, I look out the window every day to those yards. They are flooded right now. They do not unflood. They're ice rinks in the winter. It never used to be that way. It's because we keep on just a little here and a little there, and we keep on filling in these spaces. I walked the property over there that you're proposing to give away. I can't put the speakers or the pictures from my phone to show. It's flooded right now. It's been flooded. It's terrible. So one thing about high water stuff, when you're out there with chainsaws and backhoes cleaning rivers, is the high water comes along, it erodes a tree over here, this tree falls, it drives the water over to that, and then next thing you know, the next tree falls and you have bank erosion. So now you can't keep the river within its natural banks. And that's a goal of keeping the river in the banks so that that's where it's at and that's where it belongs, and that's not happening. Traffic. Some mornings, some days, it doesn't matter what time, over 10 minutes to get out of my driveway. I wish I had a snowplow in front of my truck. The traffic, I don't know what study they got, but I can tell you right now, if we want proof in the pudding, let's get the firefighters and the ambulance drivers to come before you and give an account of how the hell they go through trying to get into the trailer park behind 7-Eleven. I watch it right out my front porch. It's just crazy fighting all the traffic that we have right now, and I can't imagine adding anything to it. If you want to put apartments or anything else like that somewhere, I have a suggestion. Right here at 18 Mile and Utica Road, we park cars for 1 weekend a year. Put it there. You got enough room. Maybe you could make it 100 units. And if not, right outside the building right here, we own a piece of property, and at the end of 18 Mile Road, it was bought because we were going to put 18 Mile Road through. There's room to put the stuff there.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on my left?
My name is Kathleen MacArthur. I live at 13945 Kohler Drive, and I don't have anything new to say. I just wanted to voice my opinion that I'm against this project due to all the other reasons everyone has already given. I just feel that if one individual came up, I represent maybe 25 or 30 more people. So there you go.
Okay, anyone else on my left? Not? Council, we need a motion?
Mayor Taylor.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to close the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Koszybski. So I'll close the public hearing, and council, we need a motion.
Well, I will propose this so we can discuss it, even if I'm not for it. So, resolve to approve the application by CC There's three points to this. So, number one, to approve the application by the CCF Development Grillo Limited Dividend Housing Association, LLC, for a mixed-use planned unit development on approximately 2.1 acres situated on the east side of Van Dyke, north of Riverland Drive, PPUD 24-0002, subject to the terms and conditions set forth in the Plan Unit Development Agreement, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. Number two, to approve the agreement of sale and purchase between the City of Sterling Heights and CCF Development, Grillo Limited Dividend Housing Association, LLC, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. And three, authorize the city manager to sign all closing documents related to the agreement of sale and purchase on behalf of the city.
Support. It's been moved and supported.
Mayor Taylor, it's 2.0 acres and not 2.1.
Okay.
Oh, did I say 2.1?
You did.
I'm sorry, it is 2.0. I apologize, and I will amend that.
Entertain an amendment to 2.0 acres. Say so moved.
So moved.
Support. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is
Okay.
that good enough?
Yes.
Do we have two motions now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. So the motion on the floor is the approval with 2.0 acres, not 2.1 acres. And Ms. Sarowski, you have the floor.
Thank you. So, let us begin. So through the chair to Dr. Parcells, I have lots of questions. Well, I have some questions. So let me begin on, I want to wrap up a couple of loose ends first and just have you clarify things. So we purchased this land with ARPA money at $640,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. But this proposal is to sell it, the 10 acres that is the old amusement park, just to reiterate, to sell it to the Chaldean Community Foundation for $60,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then they are to give us, to sell the 10 acres, but they are to give us back 8 acres of their back property. They're going to develop the 2 acres of the front property, proposing. And then we are going to keep those back 8 acres and make it into a park. But those back 8 acres are pretty much only floodplain, although it does back up into by the river, and that's where we were hoping to do a river walk, but it's pretty floodable. And we aren't going to, and so it's questionable if we can develop that land, in my opinion. I'm going to put my opinion in there at this point. Okay, so. Doesn't look like it's the best part of that property, but I'm going to say that is also my opinion. So, Dr. Parcells, Phase 1, which is the Chaldean Community Foundation's apartments that are continuing to build, when did that building start? Do you have that? Do you know when that was?
Offhand, I don't have the date.
Martin Manna?
Mr. Manna, do you know when that started? Of 2023?
October of
2022. Do we have a timeline? Do you know the timeline for when that was supposed to be or when that is to be completed?
If you could, Mr. Manna, if you don't mind answering
Thank you.
questions at the
So that, yeah,
podium.
this way the residents who are hearing the TV can hear you. So it started in 2022 of October, correct?
Correct.
And what is the timeline for that to be completed?
March of '25.
Okay, so it's going along. It looks like it's somewhat on time?
Yes.
Okay. I saw it's being a lot of wood. That's expensive. That's expensive because wood is expensive. Okay, that just kind of, that was my only question for you, so thank you.
Okay,
Well, I just was trying to just get on, so it looks like it's on schedule for the most part. Very good. I do have, I have to say that traffic, I drive up and down Van Dyke all the time. I live off of 18 in Van Dyke. It's definitely a heavily congested area, even on good days. I drive up 18, from 18 to Utica every day to get to work, 5 o'clock in the morning. But I drive right by the McKay's home every single day. And I do know that that's difficult for them to get in and out of their driveway because I see that every day. But it is, and then to get up and down Van Dyke from 18 to 59, all hours of the day and night, is extremely congested, regardless of time. So I have very heavy, serious concerns about any more building and any more, bodies going in and coming in forth. That it would, I'm sure, increase traffic. So that is a concern of mine with this building. Any more building of a lot of people going into one location. But my biggest concern about this is, in all honesty, it's integrity and it's being honest. As a council, we just voted as a council to put on the ballot a proposal, a millage proposal, saying that we want to preserve green spaces. We want to preserve what little green space we have. And we're asking the voters to pass a millage to give us more money to buy more green spaces. And here we are selling our green space.
Mr. Mayor.
Please don't. I'm not
So, all right,
asking,
hold on. Listen, typically I'll ask that people don't applaud because I have mixed feelings about applause. Certainly the audience here seems to be pretty unanimously against this development, but we don't know that. You don't know that. I counted 19 people spoke. There are more than 19 people here.
Right.
And in my opinion, when you have loud displays of approval or, that you don't approve it, it has a chilling effect on speech. So there might have been 2 or 3 people here that wanted to speak, but, they don't want the mob of crowd against them. I shouldn't call it a mob. You're not a mob. You're all very respectful and very well behaved.
Right.
It's okay. We did it. It was fine. We got through it. I just ask that you keep your applause to yourselves and, just if you want, just shake your hand like this. I think that's what they say now anyway. So just, you can move your hands in approval and Mrs. Sarowski will see that and appreciate it. But I just ask you don't interrupt. Okay, Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. And yes, I appreciate everything. This is my opinion, and mine is one. But this is what I see, is that we're asking you to give us more money to maintain and to purchase more green space, and we're selling off what green space we have. So to me, that is not only a contradiction, it's a dishonesty. And so I don't feel that is something that I can support, number one. Number two, I grew up in the country, out by Lansing.
Mrs. Sarowski, I want to stop you.
What?
So I know that you made this motion for the purpose of starting a discussion, but you could have just as easily made a motion to deny for the purpose of starting a discussion based on council rules and Robert's Rules of Orders.
I could have, right.
Okay, can I get through it? It's not proper for you to make the motion and then speak against the motion. So
Okay.
if your comments are out of order to the extent that you're speaking against the motion, your options are to either speak in favor of the motion, say nothing, or to withdraw the motion, and then there will be no motion on the floor, and then I can call for a member to make a further motion.
Okay. I withdraw my motion.
Okay, the motion to amend has been withdrawn. Now the main motion is on the floor, and you're going to probably want to withdraw that motion as well.
I do.
Okay. Both motions have been withdrawn. We have no motion on the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
let me find it. Mr. Mayor, I'd also ask you to ask the audience to not make comments that are against the council from the audience.
Yeah, understood.
Do I have to make all 3 in a row?
Yeah, all 3 in a row.
Okay, thank you. Resolved to approve the application by the CCF Development Grillo Limited Dividend Housing Association, LLC, for a mixed-use plan unit development on approximately 2.0 acres situated in the east side of Van Dyke, north of Riverland Drive, PPUD 24-0002, subject to the terms and conditions set forth in the plan unit development agreement, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. 2, approve the agreement of sale and purchase between the City of Sterling Heights and CCF Development Grillo Limited Dividend Housing Association, LLC, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. And 3, authorize the city manager to sign all closing documents related to the agreement of sale and purchase on behalf of the city.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Mr. Radke, I'm going to hop over you. I'm going to let Mrs. Sarowski finish her comment.
Sure.
Okay? Mrs. Sarowski.
Well, I don't know if this is then where you want me to go, because I'm going to.
Well, I'm giving you the, I'm
All right, I
referring to you,
appreciate
giving you
that.
the courtesy because you were in the middle of you are welcome to speak against the motion now,
Okay.
since you're not the motion maker.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So my point being that living in a place where there was a lot of floodplain and a lot of wetlands, and while we are smart people and we are architects and we are builders and we are planners and we are lawyers and whatever we are, we cannot always deny that the world as it is more perfect than we all think we can be. And we have to allow the land to be what it is. And we have to allow floodplain to be floodplain. If we continue to build as much as we can do, over time, we will end up having issues with the flooding that we do. This is why downriver in different parts of Michigan and Dearborn, they have such flooding issues. There are issues with other parts of the state because we do not have the engineering that we needed to keep. So we do need to maintain certain parts of the natural environment as it is. And so that is my point, is that I do not think that we should be building in a place where we need to keep the wetland and the ground, the floodplain as it is. So while I do think, and I do applaud the Chaldean Community Foundation, because I know that you want to, I know that you want to have
Just
a
as
beautiful.
distracting, I think. Sorry.
I know that you, Mr. Mann, I know that you want to build another building for not only your community, but for the community at large. I think that the suggestion that a better place, there might be a better place. And that's my opinion. So, and that's all I have, Mayor Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't plan on making the motion, but I guess we'll get into it. I have some concerns about this project, but we have some folks here who can answer some questions. So first, through the chair to our city engineer, Mr. Bayshaw, could you come to the podium or to the desk, wherever you want to go, and kind of explain the engineering process, who approves it, which I assume is Eagle, and how this will change or not change the floodplain below the property?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Radke, and thank you, everyone. Essentially, these projects are governed by 3 jurisdictions. It's the local municipality. We have our floodplain ordinance that goes through a process where it's actually approved by the state and by FEMA. The 100-year floodplain itself is controlled by the state, which is Eagle. So Eagle permits all activities within the 100-year floodplain, and there's some activities are allowed, some aren't. But what they will do is they will not permit something that goes against the state ordinances, and we won't permit something that goes against city ordinances. So the impacts on the 100-year floodplain will be, if the development is approved, it won't impact the 100-year floodplain. There's several permitting processes involved to make sure that does not happen. Part of it is compensating cut and fill. Part of it is, certain regulations on what you can put in the floodplain and what you can't put in the floodplain. So the existing development was permitted through Eagle, through the city and through FEMA, and it meets all local, state and federal regulations.
To go further, two things, I guess one thing for you. Could you explain what a cut and fill is? I'm not an engineer. I know the process, but I think there's some people in the audience who might not understand it, and people at home who really won't understand it.
So there's I guess the best way to think about a drain in a floodplain, there's an area called the floodway. That's the most restrictive area. This is the area that carries the 100-year floodplain. When you have a flooding event, it's what you see the water really moving at, is the floodway. Now, the floodway is very restrictive. You can't, Eagle won't let you do anything in the floodway, essentially. Very, very minimal things. The floodplain is where the water kind of expands out and it holds as the drainage is being conveyed through the floodway. So the floodplain serves its purpose as the water fills it. It's established at a certain elevation. It fills the floodplain, it holds it until the floodway can carry the drainage through, then the floodway comes back down. So it serves the purpose as somewhat of a basin to hold water until it can get the chance to flow downstream through the river.
And on this project, there's, through the chair, in this project, there is also going to be a detention basin built below the current site to also help retain waters?
Yeah, and it's also a cut. So, and I'm sorry if I didn't answer your cut and fill question. So essentially, when you do earthwork on a site, if you're adding dirt, if you're adding ground to the floodplain, you're moving the floodplain around in theory. So when you develop a site, and what Eagle looks at, what our local ordinance look at, is if you fill in a certain area, you have to cut at least that much out. So that's what when I say cut and fill, that's.
So the site can be altered, but it can't be added to or reduced?
Yeah, in the end, you can't have more fill in the floodplain than when you started.
Okay. I appreciate that, Mr. Bayshaw. I have some more questions for some other people, but I think you might have some more questions tonight, so I didn't hang around. Through the chair to our economic development consultant, Mr. Bonner. In the past, Grillo, this is before my time on council, Grillo had asked for this to become a senior living facility.
Yeah, correct.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Was that approved by the planning commission, or was that just a speculative venture that never got off the ground? Through the chair.
If I remember correctly, that was a speculative venture that never got off the ground.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I was
I don't
curious
think that
about.
ever came through full entitlement to the city.
So the problem with this site, or not the problem, I think there's a lot of things going on here. There were concerns made by some of the audience members about green space and parkland. But 8 acres are going to be deeded back to the city to fulfill a nature walk, which is part of our North Van Dyke master plan, along the river. So I see this building as having more than enough parkland to go along with it. But through the chair to Mr. Manna, if you would, I have a couple questions about the property, and I'm looking at what's page 117 of our packet, the proposed building. First, I saw that you asked for, I think it's 132 parking spaces. Is that correct?
If it's okay, sir, we have our architects here
please.
and the engineers. I'm just going to ask them to come up.
That's even better. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at them the entire time.
We also have the traffic engineer, the organization that did the traffic study, if there's any questions.
I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm sorry. The first
No problem.
question?
Well, it's about the 32 parking spaces on site. And I know that was, that wasn't, go ahead.
I'm listening. I'm
Sure. The 132 parking spaces were asked for based on a MSHDA recommendation. Do I have that correct?
Do you want to address that?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Mark Abernathy with Alexander Bogarts, the architects for the project. MSHDA has a set of standards that I believe is roughly 2 spaces per unit, and we're looking at 1.5, so we're looking at a waiver from MSHDA based on what we think is the reality of the project itself. And in terms of the parking count, I want to be accurate on it. proposing 132 spaces.
That's what I thought.
6 of them are going to be for the retail, and then we have roughly 126 for the units. Basically, what we do is look at one-bedroom units as having 1 car for them, and the 2-bedroom units having 2 cars for them. And that's generally where the numbers come from.
And the reason I ask that is, we have census data from the most recent census that says a 2-bedroom apartment is inhabited by 1.5 people in Sterling Heights. So I think your parking requirements, even at 132, are a little high. I would be more in favor of land banking 7 spaces and going, 7 spaces and going down to 125. I actually think that 125 would be more than enough, but I was hopeful that the applicant might be considering land banking some spaces to get a little bit more green space on site. I know that with the cut and fill procedure, you have to kind of do what you need to do first, but are you familiar with the land bank process?
Yeah, there's communities all over that we work in that provide area that is essentially planned for potential future parking.
if you need it in the
If it's
future.
needed,
Yes.
correct. I would, go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say I would defer to the CCF to see if they're open to that. I know there was dialogue between us and planning, and I think that based on the waiver we're asking for from MISTA and what reality is to units, that we're more comfortable with staying at that 1.5, but, we'd like to stay at the 1.5, yeah.
We're trying to create a walkable district.
Correct.
And we don't have public parking districts yet, though we're gonna have to add them with Lakeside and other things going on. It's a need in the corridor, because requiring every building to have the parking that it does kind of defeats some of the walkability purpose. You'd agree with that, right? The idea that we have to make people drive their cars into the corridor will never get to a true pedestrian-friendly corridor if they only can get there by driving. So that's something I was hoping you'd think about. I guess through the chair to Mr. Manna, I saw a lot of discussion at the Planning Commission about the fact that there's only one retail unit in the ground floor. I was hoping you might be able to talk with me a little bit about that, because I know we want a fully functioning corridor with mixed-use buildings. I appreciate there's one retail unit. I was hoping you might talk about why you don't want to put other retail units in, because I agree with someone who came up here today. I forget his name. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it, write it down. But if you don't build it now, will you ever build it? That's the concern.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you for the question. So as you know, the current development has about 9,000 square feet of retail. And so we're taking that into account and just the general area. And it's one thing to have retail, you got to make sure that people also are utilizing it. It's our goal to, make this a destination. We're looking at some markets and cafes to take the current space that will be ready next March. And so we're just being cautious and making sure that we have enough space for the demand.
And I appreciate that, and I actually agree with the first who came up here, said that I'd prefer a market or a cafe or some kind of retail that activates the corridor versus like a doctor's office or some kind of healthcare clinic, which really wouldn't. Looking at the site on my map, I guess I'll go through the chair to Mr. Parcell right now. I only see one walkway connecting from the main sidewalk to the site, which is on the south side of the building. Is that correct, Dr. Parcell?
I believe that is correct right now, yes.
Through our, I guess, planning process, I know that we have a requirement that walkways be connected. I think it's kind of crazy that the north side of the building doesn't have a walkway. Would we be working with the petitioner to put one in, or should I ask for it right now?
No, it could be very easily done by covering about 15 feet with a sidewalk there. We would just need to make sure that due to the cut and fill, there's either a slope or some type of accessible entry, which would be reviewed during site plan review.
Thank you, Dr. Purcell. Mr. Mann, would you be willing to put an entrance on the north side or a sidewalk so it's connected?
We are all about connecting the green space, so absolutely.
One of my concerns with this building is there's no real front entrance. It's kind of positioned toward the parking lot, which defeats the purpose of a corridor. Could you tell me why you've positioned the building this way? And maybe it's because of the cut-fill nature of the site, but why there isn't a main entrance on Van Dyke?
Well, I'll allow the architect to address that, but I will tell you a couple things. We're trying to create this downtown-style atmosphere, and that's also the highest ground.
Right.
And so I'll let, do you want to add anything to that, Mark?
Part of what I see, the vision based on the master plan for this area and discussions, we've had numerous meetings with all the different departments in the community about the project. And our understanding is that, and we see this in communities all over that are trying to create a vibrant downtown walkable community, is to bring the buildings close to the road. I mean, the building itself is still going to be some 50 feet from the curb, plus minus. So it's not going to be right on top of the road. In order to build in the floodplain, we had to raise the building up above, because the entire site is in either floodway or floodplain, as is a portion of Van Dyke. We had to elevate the building 6 feet above where the sidewalk is right now. So when you build the building close to the road, and you have to park it, because people have to be able to get vehicles into the building, you want to put the entrances to the building adjacent to the parking, because we want to have a walkable, which is in the back. So all of our 3 entrances into the building, into the 2 elevators that are in the building, are from the back where the predominant parking is. We've wrapped the parking on the south side and on the north side to gain access as well, because we have access points there. The southwest corner of the building is where the retail is. So that's where, from a pedestrian standpoint, if people are biking or walking along Van Dyke to get into that space, up into the building, we have a barrier-free ramp that allows you to get up into that building. If you drive to it, you're going up one of 2 drives, most likely the southern, into those parking spaces and into the building. So we're not putting multiple access points to the front of the building, because the predominant access to the building is going to be from the parking in the rear.
Right. But you can see how that's a concern, because if we want to create a vibrant, walkable district, parking shouldn't be the predominant way to use or function on the building.
Well, in this instance, I have to respectfully disagree, because you're 6 feet up.
Right.
And the parking is also elevated 6 feet up. It's going to be walkable and vibrant from the standpoint of how the building presents itself to the street with the landscaping.
Well, I understand what you're saying. But I mean, if you go to Ferndale or Royal Oak or any other, the entrance to the building is usually in the front of the building. You don't require pedestrians to walk behind the building to enter. You can understand what I'm saying, right? That makes sense in a downtown district, that you would enter a building from the roadway, from the front of the building, especially because we have plans for a road diet on Van Dyke to create a more walkable corridor with larger sidewalks and bike lanes and things of that nature. So you can understand my concern about wanting the building to be walkable from the front also, right?
Well, you cited, the communities you cited, the buildings are down at grade with the
Right.
road,
That's
with
the
the
one concern I
sidewalks.
have.
So you have, that's was my main point to discuss, that you're not comparing apples to apples. You have a building that's elevated 6 feet in the air, and your parking is in the rear. A lot of those cities where the parking is in the rear, they're also accessed from the rear.
I have no
So
problem with access from the rear, but I
And I'm
wanna
not
make-
trying to be argumentative,
No.
I was just trying to answer the question, why we designed it the way we did.
I understand that, but you can understand my concern. I understand that it has to be elevated because of the floodplain. I'm more willing to go along with the rear base of the building because of that. But in most downtowns, like the 9-mile plan that East Point proposed, they require every building on the street to have a front entrance that is the main entrance. And Ferndale requires this too. It's right in their code. Birmingham does too. So I mean, we are kind of, because of the unique nature of the site, I can understand why you did what you did.
Right.
But you can understand my concerns about creating a district that is based upon the roadway and not the rear. That's my only concern. I guess, thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Through the chair to Dr. Parcell, this is zoned currently RM3 with the Van Dyke overlay, correct?
No overlay, RM3.
There's no it's not part of the North Van Dyke corridor?
That ordinance has not been adopted.
Okay, that makes sense. So in a by right development, what could they put on this parcel in the RM3 compared to the PUD they're asking for?
So the RM3 district is our mid to high-rise zoning district. It's one of our main districts tooled for multifamily development. This includes various types of housing development, multiplexes and townhouses, which, as we discussed, are not particularly well-suited for this site. However, it's pretty much one of two districts in the city calling for multiple family dwellings at a greater density. Just to give you an idea of the maximum height of the building, in our code of ordinances as written, in stories, there is no maximum height restriction, and in feet, there is no maximum height restriction. So you could theoretically do a building however high the soil will allow through engineering. The benefit of using the PUD is to move the building closer to the road, which one, fits in line with the North Van Dyke goals of the district, and two, also would preserve more open space in the rear. And if I may, if appropriate, Mr. Mayor, touch on the question he just had about the front entrance. I think the best way to look at that is with the height, you'd need a ramp at a certain grade, and you risk either removing several units outdoor balcony spaces to do that, other than doing it in the rear. So I think that the applicant is most well presenting that every unit in here has an outdoor private amenity space. That's my rationale at least. So we made sure to work with them for the southern retail to have entry from the public right of way. But we want to avoid, removing balconies on a few units. It's not quite equitable there.
I can understand that. I guess my overall concern, though, is that we want a district that faces the street. So I can understand because of the unique nature here of why we're doing what we're doing. But I just wanted to make clear on that, because if we create a district that is focused around the car and parking, we're defeating our own goals. That's my thinking there. I guess currently, do we understand how we're going to connect this site with the nature trail, or is that still up in the air because we're still trying to acquire some property and do some things to create a unified park structure along the Clinton River?
I believe that is still up in the air in terms of an official plan. It is in line with the, as I stated, master land use plan here for the district, and with the ownership being with the city, allows for us freedom to align this more closely with what our parks and recreation goals are.
And with Van Dyke being a Macomb County.
I can add to that too,
Please.
if you don't mind.
Thank you.
So we do have planning still yet to do on the portion along the river to figure out what that park and connection is actually going to look like. We do have project number one that we have a connection with, this project that we have a connection with. We are active in the market for acquiring other parcels as well. And then we've also acquired two other parcels along Riverland over the last couple of years on the south side of Riverland as part of the overall NVDA master plan for an art walk. And we also need to connect to Dodge Park, then across Riverland and back into this area. So we still have quite a bit of planning left to do.
I appreciate that, Mr. Bonner. Thank you. I guess while we're talking, Mr. Bonner, could you tell me more about both residential occupancy rates in Sterling Heights, and then what are the occupancy rates of other apartment buildings, not just on North Van Dyke, but in general? I know you usually have some of those figures pretty handy. We've talked about it on the phone before.
The residential rates, I don't. I could tell you industrial and commercial. So I can research that number and get back to you, and I apologize for not having that number available for you right now.
No problem. I just know that I recently spoke to Mr. Gallo, and I also have recently spoken with the people at Republic who have the block. And the Republic representative said to me that the block is already half full. And that Mr. Gallo said that his current building on Hall Road in Shaner is like at 89% capacity is what he said to me when I spoke with him. So the idea that people don't want to live in apartments or don't have places to live, we have a housing crisis right now. People need places to live. Everywhere I go, people tell me they can't move into Sterling Heights. And I also think there's something interesting about the market right now. You know, I saw some people on Facebook and elsewhere saying, you know, that's more than my mortgage. Yes, if you have a mortgage that's 10 years old or you got it during the pandemic, you have an excellent mortgage. You have probably a 3% or less rate. Your payment is probably equivalent to what people are paying for housing right now, which I know, talking to apartment developers, is $1,400 to $1,600 a unit right now. That's what the rent is. But if you are a person with not great credit right now, if you wanted to buy a home in Sterling Heights, the average home is retailing for $300,000. You need a $60,000 down payment for 20%. Your note is going to be more than 7%. You're going to need $2,300 a month just to make your note to buy your house a month. That's why rents are going up, because housing prices are going up, because mortgage rates, interest rates are going up. So comparing what you have from 10 years ago to what people are on the market for right now is not equivalent. And I speak to these people all the time. We've had them come to our meeting and say, I can't find a place to live in Sterling Heights. My children can't find a place to live in Sterling Heights. They're being forced out of the city because there aren't places to live. And I guess through the chair to Mr. Manna, there's some affordability with these units. I know someone asked about the cost and how they might sign up for your waiting list. If you could talk about that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Give you an example. So the first development, when we're about 4 months out, which will be in November, people have the ability to then inquire. And there are income requirements just to be eligible to be considered. So while the Chaldean Community Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, owns the property, we're not really involved in who is going to be leasing the space. That is a separate party, and it's part of our request because of the Fair Housing Act. So you've heard some things like there's a wait list. There's no specific wait list for these units. We know, because we serve 41,000 people at the Chaldean Community Foundation annually, of many different ethnicities and backgrounds, that there is a need for affordable housing or attainable housing. And that is why we're doing this development. The other reason is we provide wraparound services. So if someone's in these units, we'll also have the ability to provide behavioral health, access to health care, career services, job placement, resume writing, many other types of services. And we do also provide services to more than almost 1,500 clients with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The rental rates will be anywhere between $795 a unit to $1,100 on the high end. These are brand-new units, and so the other thing is people don't understand this isn't really Section 8. What this is more or less is rent control. So we will not be raising rents. MSHDA doesn't allow that. That's part of the requirements of the loan. It's only adjusted per the cost of inflation.
I appreciate that. I think I've gotten all my questions answered. I guess I'm just gonna speak right now about housing in general in Sterling Heights. When we acquired this property, it was to essentially hold on to land that we thought was important, both for our future parks and for development of the North Van Dyke corridor. I see this proposal as meeting both requirements. It's going to add people to the corridor, which will add vibrancy, which will add to the retail, which will hopefully activate an area that all of our surveys and all of our studies and everything we've done says is one of the most distressed parts of Sterling Heights. When I was first elected, this entire area was, I guess, the poorest part. I don't want to call it the poorest part, but the most downtrodden part of the city. It was tires, auto body shops, and vacant land. And this parcel, which they proposed to build on, has been vacant 30-something years. I remember going to the Riverland Amusement Park when I was a kid. I've been in Sterling Heights now for 27 years. But I don't see any proposal emerging to develop this land. So we can kill two birds with one stone here. We can build a river walk, we can add to our parks program, and we can give housing to people who need to have housing, who are residents of the city, who live here now, who want a place to live. I understand all the concerns of people who came up here. And a lot of the concerns are always the concerns, which boil down to often, I don't want more neighbors. I don't want more people. But that's not fair to people who already live here, people who want to live in our community. You know, we are blessed to have one of the best police, one of the best fire departments, and one of the best, in my opinion, city administrations in the state. And that's why people want to live here. We have one of the best parks programs in the state. So this idea that this is some bait and switch, it's not. We're keeping 8 acres to build a park, which was always our goal. And I just think that there's a lot of, honestly, a lot of xenophobia, not in this room right now, but online, where people are saying, well, it's only for Chaldeans. It's only for this. They're getting kickbacks. It's all fantasy. Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to provide for our residents. So I'm happy to support this with a couple of the changes we talked about, maybe a few more trees in the right of way. But I appreciate your willingness to develop these sites. The first site is coming along. It's going to be a tremendous development. This one's coming along. And I think this is going to be the spur and the corridor that we need to really continue development, to build out our master plan, to take what was a distressed area and make it into the crown jewel of Sterling Heights. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Zarko.
Okay. I have some questions. And I want everybody to know you're not going to be having like this for me, because I've got some things you're probably not going to agree with. But first of all, through the chair to, let's start at the beginning, through the chair to Mr. Bonner, what year did we actually establish the CIA, the Corridor Improvement Authority?
2008.
2008. So it has been stagnant, let's guess, for how many years? Until the Chaldean, well, you tell me how long it was saying. That would be a better way to do it.
From the very
Because in my
beginning.
head, I'm thinking this one in, but I don't know the years.
Well, yeah, so there's a couple of reasons. The Corridor Improvement Authority is predicated upon tax income and financing. So when the corridor was established, the Great Recession happened, property values plummeted specifically in that area. So there took quite a bit of time for catch up on property value increases, to the point today where we actually have resources to do some projects and effectuate parts of the plan in that district. I would say, as far as the overall goals of the corridor, like I said, we've had development there. We've only had a handful of projects developed there. But in terms of the true intent of what the corridor is supposed to be, I would say that project number 1 from the foundation is really kind of the catalyst of, what we have been expecting the corridor to be, which started only a couple of years ago. Now, I'll also say this, though, that project actually started in like 2016. Because there were questions about FEMA and Eagle and MISTA. There were a lot of different engineering hoops that they had to jump through to prove that this site could be developed. So that took a considerable amount of time. So to the point where we're at today.
Okay, so it's been since 2008 that we knew that we were going to be developing that corridor.
Correct.
Somehow, okay. I guess, and then through the chair to Mr. Koszewski. I know we have a ballot proposal, but will you please explain to me that in the writing of that proposal, does it say that we're going in for land acquisition, but is it specific to keeping it green space, or does it say that we will be using it in the best interest of the residents after it's purchased?
Mr. Koszewski.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Ziarko, the ballot proposal provides that we will be buying, if we get this passed, green space, which will have improvements on it. What those improvements are will likely be park amenities, things of that nature.
Okay, is this parcel any part of that proposal, or this was done beforehand, correct?
Yes, this is not part of that.
So this we knew was going to be probably sold off and used in the best interest of the residents?
Correct.
Okay. First of all, those of you that spoke about the Chaldean Community Foundation, if you don't work with them, you don't realize what an asset they are to our community. They do so much work for the people that live here, that work here, and come through here to make us better. So if you're asking for a partner in that particular area, you can't ask for a better partner than the Chaldean Community Foundation. because they aren't. I don't want to, I don't look at the memes, and I pretty much don't even go on Facebook anymore because it's not all of what's real. And I know that if you, any of you tonight would talk to Mr. Manna, he would invite you to come and sit at the foundation so that you could see the work that they actually do and what they've done for the kids that are there. Establish actually sign language for people that are coming into the country that don't know English and don't even have a sign language that they can communicate with, that they actually had to make one so that they could communicate with the people that didn't understand them or didn't understand us. The other good thing about this project is affordable housing. Because I really think that it's needed. We've tried projects before in the community that doesn't make it through all of the restrictions that are put in place by the state and the federal government. So it's unusual for this project that started in 2016. And I remember when I was asked to speak at the ribbon cutting, the one word I used to describe it, and I'm sure Mr. Manna will remember, was perseverance. That from 2016 till we put the shovels into the ground, it was persevering until we got the answers that we needed. But the one concern I have is the flooding that everybody is talking about. So that is my biggest concern. It's not because you're putting people in that area. It might create, I mean, we'll have to resolve a traffic problem if it arises, but I'm not going to disagree. I think there's a lot of traffic there already, and it's only going to get worse. And I'm going to agree with Mr. Radke about land banking some of the parking, if just to consider it, because it really saves you money to land bank it. So if you would consider, doing some of that land banking so that people living there might not be able to afford cars. They're going to be looking for public transportation. If this isn't approved through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, I guess, if this isn't approved tonight, do we still own this property?
Mr. Vanderpool.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Bonner because I don't know that we have certain conditions, but go ahead, Mr. Bonner.
Yeah, we'll still own it.
We'll still own it after. And Mr. Bonner, what are some of the other possibilities of how this will be developed if we don't approve this tonight?
Ooh, well, I think, I think we can do two things. One, we could keep it as open space, public open space, which would require quite a bit of work still, obviously, to improve it that way. Or we can reopen an RFP and see if we get other proposals.
But the intention, through the chair, the intention is that we are going to sell some of this parcel off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the recommendation that I will always have. If we're going to improve this district from, a mixed-use, high-density corridor that promotes walkability and we take advantage of the park system and the river, then yeah, we should absolutely be selling a piece of this off for development.
And then, Mr. Bayshaw, I'm going to ask you about the flooding that's happening in some of these yards now and the fact that the residents are saying this is unusual. Because that's the biggest problem I see is the flooding that they're having. I mean, like I said, bringing the apartments in, I don't have a problem with that. The traffic, it could be anywhere. But I think my biggest thing is what the residents brought up tonight is the flooding in their backyards. And I know I wouldn't want it in my backyard.
Yeah, I understand. I think what's happening now, the river is very high. We've had a lot of rain events. The river was already high before the large rain event we had yesterday. The ground is already saturated. Everyone knows this. You walk on the ground, it's squishing. There's not much infiltration right now. So I think these rain events are, really, they're taxing the system, but also the system is functioning the way it's supposed to, is that the water is supposed to spill out into this floodplain and hold until it has a chance to go down. for instance, the golf place right next door, GBT's, it used to be called, I think it's Heinrich now, yeah. So that whole area, when that was developed, they did something similar where they pushed, earth up front, create a buildable area up front, and then they excavated some in the back. So you can see that today is, when you go back there, some of that GBT's is holding water as well, but that's the way it's supposed to function. If you go downstream to the apartments towards Riverland, there, you could see the river's high there, and there's water filling in that floodplain as well in those apartments. So I think, I understand the concerns, and I understand, we've had a lot of rain lately, and we've had a lot of rain events in certain situations that are raising the water levels into that floodplain.
Do you think that the development that's going on right now next to the ZAP zone had anything to do with the flooding in those backyards?
No, that development is it's actually gonna have a net cut when it's done.
So what does that mean?
So you're gonna have it's gonna be more of a positive, and you're actually creating a little bit more floodplain when it's done, because they're cutting a little bit more than what they had to fill up front. So the fill area they needed up front, is all the way up towards Van Dyke, and, what they need to do is elevate the finished floor of that property to keep the habitable homes safe from flooding. So, and we have certain restrictions on that, how high that has to be, and our standards even exceed state standards in that matter. But they lifted the ground up front, but then they're cutting away from the back of the parcel.
And explain what will happen if the new apartment building goes through, as far as the backside of that and the floodplain. Or you don't know because it's not there yet?
We don't know because it's not there yet, but we do know the regulations that they have to meet, and they have to meet our city floodplain regulations. They have to meet the state floodplain regulations, and then it's also reviewed by FEMA. So, Mr. Bonner said that their project started in 2016, and it did. There was a couple of years of just permitting and designing to make sure that they met all these requirements, and they did receive their permits, and that would be the same process that would happen with this development.
Okay. That's my biggest concern, is the flooding in the neighborhoods. And if you don't feel that this is either apartment complex is causing that flooding, that it's a natural happening, then, I guess if we don't start developing this, we knew what we were going to do, that it's never going to be developed, that it's always going to be what it is. And I don't think that's the intention of what that corridor was designed for. So I guess my other thought is there a way to, postponing this isn't going to make a difference, and completing that building as to whether it's going to help the flooding in the back? In other words, if we said, well, we don't want you to start the second one until we know the effects of the first one, that's really not going to matter. I mean, am I understanding that?
Correct. I mean, both sites independently are going to have to, meet the state, local, and federal regulations.
Will we be on top of it all the time, so that if there is a problem in these neighborhoods, that we will help them in whatever way we can, so that they don't have standing water in their backyards?
Yeah, I think this, the standing water, I think, is just it's a thing that happened with the rain event that's happening. I don't attribute it to any new developments, because any new developments are, have to meet these standards that do not make sure they do not impact the 100-year floodplain.
Okay. I think that's all I have for you. And I think that's all the notes that I took. Like I said, my biggest concern is the flooding. And if you can tell me that it's not, the buildings aren't the cause of it, I think that we should move forward with this project.
The city, another point of interest, the city participates in it's what's called the community rating system. It's a voluntary program that's run by the NFIP and by FEMA. You do not have to participate as a community in this program. but we do, and they check your ordinances, they check your site plans, they check, the projects that you've done over the years, and we've had the second highest rating in the state behind Grand Rapids. So it's a voluntary program, and really it's a model program for the state that we run.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And lastly, I would just encourage Mr. Manna to meet with some of the residents that brought their concerns to you today, so that you can listen to them as you move forward with this project, and do everything you can to make sure that what they're saying, you work together to get it resolved. And invite them to, the foundation building. You can go get food from Ishtar, and they can have a nice meal there. You can take them through there, show them the gym, show them all you do, because you are an asset to our community. Nothing further.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Mr. Bonner, I have a couple questions. Now, am I correct in understanding that they're going to ask for a pilot program? How does that affect the CIA? Isn't that district capped at a certain tax level and money invested back into that area?
Councilwoman Koski, so we do anticipate that they'll be requesting a pilot or payment in lieu of taxes, which is typical for projects like this that have both low-income housing tax credits and MISTA financing. That's what we approved on the first project, and their financial structure is the same. So we expect them to make that request. As far as the Corridor Improvement Authority, that's a really good question. So there is a portion of this project that'll be taxable. That'll be the 3,000 square feet of commercial space. We haven't estimated what that property tax generation would be, but that property tax off the commercial space will come to the Corridor Improvement Authority. Very similarly to the first project, the 9,000 square feet of commercial space will also be taxable, and the property taxes from that will also come to the Corridor Improvement Authority. The pilot payment and the municipal services agreement together go back to the city general fund.
And that is going to be anywhere from 7,500 to 10,000 for the pilot, and then 10 to 15,000 for the multiple service agreement?
That's my estimate, correct.
Okay.
And that's on an annual basis, Councilwoman Koski.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Those are annual numbers.
Right. Somewhere along the line, I recall a $50,000 payback. I was under the impression that we were going to sell parcel 1 and parcel 2 to the Chaldean Foundation, and then they were going to deed back parcel 2 to us in exchange for our paying them $50,000. Why am I remembering that? And is that no longer applying?
No, the way that we've always structured this is one sale price, and we're basing the sale price off what we believe to be the developable portion of the property, which is 2 acres. In terms of how the transaction will occur, they'll take title to the entire parcel so that they can make all of their cut and fill and engineering requirements. And they can do that on their own without having the city be liable and sort of that chain of title at that time. Once all the cut and fill and engineering is finished, finalized, inspected by the city to meet their engineering requirements, at that point in time, then they'll deed back the rest of the property to the city.
But the only money exchange is $30,000 per acre,
Correct.
and we paid $60,000 per acre.
That's correct. 64,000 per acre.
All right, wanted to make sure I understood that. We moved to Sterling Heights back in 1969, year after the city became a city. I recall going down Van Dyke. I recall the flooding. I recall the museum park there. I want to say there was like a Ferris wheel, and I can't remember what else, underwater. I recall the project there on Riverland Drive that has the parking underneath the building, where the cars were flooded. So my major concern here is flooding. Now, I understand the cut and fill, through the chair to Mr. Bonner again. When you cut and fill, you're digging out an area and using that fill if it's suitable to impact or to pack the area that you want to build, which means that you've left a hole. Now, isn't that going to fill with water? And if that's so, what are we going to, as a city, going to be able to use that second parcel for any kind of recreational purposes if we've got nothing but water there?
So that's what I mentioned earlier. That's still what we don't know yet, is what exactly we'll have. I didn't think that was funny, but that's what we don't know yet, is what will be left over when the engineering takes place, and then how can we plan around that to make it accessible and usable.
Well, I know that we talked about having like a little kayak station there and so on, but ingress and egress. Mr. Bonner, can you help me with that? Or Dr. Purcell, ingress and egress to the back of the property from Van Dyke, not Riverland, Van Dyke.
Yes. So you're inferring on how we would reach the trailway through Van Dyke through this property?
Well, I'm under the impression that parcel 2, the 8 acres in the back, would be open to the public, that it would be a recreational facility that we would create along the river there, river walk, canoe rides, whatever, canoe launch. How is the public going to get back there?
Yes. So we can actually, if SHTV can pull up the plan for me I have here. Like Mr. Bonner stated, the master plan for the area is connectivity. There's a lot of different moving parts with that in terms of how to work with our parks department to plan for that. So you'll see here, this would be the eastern side. It shows the Riverwalk going up there. We've planned for it to be established there to connect these parkways. There's still some work with the property owners on some of these parcels on how we would achieve that. But ultimately, we have the infrastructure in place with the existing parks on either side to do so. And what we'll eventually do once we see what the remainder of the property is, have a cohesive look at the parcels that front the river there, is create the plan to establish the recreational facility. So there's a lot of different, I wouldn't say property acquisition, but a lot of different planning methods that would have to go in with our parks department to ensure that we have the best product there, which I think Mr. Langlois' team has shown they're quite capable of.
But as far as the Chaldean Foundation, we do not have any kind of agreement built into that purchase agreement to give an easement as far as ingress and egress onto Van Dyke from the back parcel. That back parcel is locked, landlocked.
I would defer to Mr. Koszybski on that.
Mr. Koszybski.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Koski, that's a great question. The first project, we addressed that same issue. The Chaldean Community Foundation granted us that right with a pathway going from Van Dyke all the way to the back so that we have that access point, and we're assuming, and we are working on with them to do the same thing on this project.
But it's not done yet.
That's part of the deal that we're cutting, yes. We will have that access.
So there's things that we still have not agreed to with the Community Foundation, correct? As far as that parcel is concerned.
The Community Foundation is granting us that easement. Am I, unless I've misstated.
It's Tom Haji, I'm a director and I'm overseeing the project. If Jake, if you could pull up the site plan, I could just point out exactly.
I have it somewhere. Would this one suffice?
Yeah, if you minimize it just a little.
Yeah.
So you can, the very north,
It's Working on it.
It'll minimize.
So if you go to the very north where you see those trees, that's where we're proposing the walkway to the rear to connect with your river walk. And also to the front off Van Dyke, you'll have a little access to the retail, but as far as connectivity, it'd be right along the side, that north end where you see those trees alongside the parking lot, right along that entrance. Yep.
So it would be the north end of the parcel.
North end of the parcel, correct.
Through the chair to Mr. Manna, if you could, please. Are you aware of all the expenses that you're going to face with this project?
Yes,
And you are totally comfortable with them?
yes.
No matter what FEMA says or anything like that?
Well, we go through a process just to make sure that, A, we have to get all approvals. So this can't continue unless we get Eagle and FEMA, MISTA all on board to approve the project. So we've done a lot of that preliminary work already. I think they mentioned the initial project took 7 years, not when we put a shovel in the ground, but just to make sure we went through all the due diligence. This actual property is actually the soil and the property based on the elevations is in much better, we're in a much better place than we are even with the current development. So, yeah, we have allocated resources to make sure that we could get the construction and the building done and completed.
I think you're doing a fantastic job with all the different projects that you do, but I am greatly concerned with the money that you're going to invest on this project, because I think it's a lot more than what you're prepared for. Because like I said, I've been there, I've seen it, and I just shudder at the thought of you investing all that money in that 4-story building and putting people in there and then having issues. So I'm sorry, I can't support this location. You've got a great project, but I think you can find a better location for it, because I don't want you to get hurt financially.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to vote no.
Okay, I'm going to jump in quickly just to piggyback off that, because what I thought I heard you just say is that the building, the first site that's under construction right now is from an engineering standpoint, it's a bigger challenge than the current project we're talking about. Is that fair?
That's correct. This is a smaller footprint and it's, the elevations are higher.
Okay, so being that you've gone through this process for the last 8 years, would you say you're fairly well aware of what the costs and expenses will be?
Yeah, of course. We did encounter some challenges with this current project, but what we did is we planned for it. So the foundation work is more expensive than a typical project, but it was, well, it's been compensated for. I mean, we looked through the plans and the budgeting process, and you got to also understand, I mean, we brought in expert engineers. We worked directly with the federal government and FEMA. The Michigan State Housing Development Authority would not give us a loan. We wouldn't get insurance on these units or the parcel if the insurance companies thought that they couldn't insure the project. We also have emergency preparedness plans and prepared for the worst case of these 100-year flood events. And so we've gone through all the different scenarios, and I appreciate the comments, but, you know, I wouldn't be putting $60 million in resources to waste if I thought that this wasn't going to work.
Okay, Mrs. Schmidt?
Thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Parcell. So I have a few opinions here, but my first question has to do with the golf range that's going to be between these two buildings that are 6 foot higher than their property, and how that's going to impact them.
It's a great question. As Mr. Bonner said, they did some site work as well, moving land up to the front to establish their buildable area. But ultimately, it wouldn't have a huge impact, in my opinion, on those. The public right-of-way sidewalk is level It would be easily traversed if there were any changes there. City engineering would make sure that the slope was ADA accessible. So
I'm talking about flooding.
yeah, I don't view that there would be a huge impact on the driving range. I think actually with the stormwater requirements the city has, and Mr. Bayshaw may hop in if I'm leading it astray, but with the underground detention on this site and with the cut and fill, I think that this site would be more well-equipped to handle the stormwater for the adjacent property.
Mr. Bayshaw, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Parcells. You know, again, you know, I've said this a few times, and I feel, I don't want to keep reiterating myself, but they do have to meet all the state EGLE guidelines, they have to meet all the FEMA guidelines. There's many hoops for them to jump through to ensure they are not providing any negative impacts to the surrounding area, negative impacts to the floodplain.
Okay, so I guess that leads me to my next question, and not to put you on the spot. However, you implied that it's a coincidence now that these residents are having more flooding now since that first phase has been built. And I'm having a hard time with that. You know, I mean, I guess there has to be some sort of correlation between a new build and additional flooding. And that really concerns me.
You know, another thing that's going on right now is there are with the environment, and this is factual, is that we're getting more heavy rain events than we've had in the past. These 100-year rain events are happening every 10 years, it seems like now. So, you know, there is a definite change in the environment where we're getting these heavier rains and more often, and I've even, you know, I've seen it since the start of my career here. But, you know, there is a change in the environment that's impacting these drains as well.
Okay, that's all I have for you, Mr.
Okay.
Bayshaw. As far as the traffic, so you provided a traffic study that was one day, correct? May 23rd, 2023, one day.
If I may, the representative from the
That'd be
study.
great.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be great.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Steve Russo, traffic engineer at Colliers Engineering and Design. We did the traffic study for the project per the request of the city. Happy to answer any questions you have.
So is that typical that it would only be a one-day study?
Yes, so typically, there are, per accepted standards, you would typically go out and count one day, but there are certain requirements within that. It has to be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of a typical week. Usually we try to do it while schools are in session, avoid, any major, atypical type events. If we know there's a construction project or something like that going on, we wouldn't go out and count. So yes, that is typical.
Okay, that just caught me off guard because I drive that area very often and there is a lot of traffic there. And especially if the city is planning on doing a calming of that by reducing lanes, it's going to make it even worse, in my opinion. So that's a concern of mine. A lot of my questions have been answered through the, no, I'm just going to, you can sit down. I just have some comments. So we're talking about affordable housing. We all agree we need affordable housing. Affordable housing, to me, is not connected to income requirements. It's affordable housing for anybody, not just people that have specific income requirements. It's a great price point. I can appreciate that. And it's rent control. I can appreciate that. I'm not against apartments. I'm not against the Chaldean Community Foundation. I know you do wonderful things. I just think that the issues with all the water really concerns me. And as far as the property goes, it's our property. It doesn't matter what it's zoned. If we don't want to build on it, we don't build on it. It's our property. So it doesn't matter what the zoning is right now or what can be built there because it's ours. So that kind of frustrates me too. And, the millage, the ballot proposal. I really think we're being hypocritical. I think that if we want to buy green space to keep green space, and we're gonna sell off green space for housing, what are we doing? What are we asking for? Residents are asking us to keep space green, make parks, do things to keep the city green, to keep density out. And that's why I can't support this. So I have nothing further.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Okay, so a lot of my questions have been asked and answered. I guess something, Mr. Bayshaw, if you don't mind coming up. There's been a lot of discussion about flooding, and you keep going back. I think it's fair to say that your position is that this project will get approval from all of the various jurisdictions that are required to provide approval, and that upon the approval, the determination will have been made that it's not going to impact surrounding properties. Is that fair? Is that a fair summation of your comments?
Correct. They won't receive those approvals unless they meet all those regulations, and then that would be fact.
So, I mean, what do you say? Because I heard residents here, and I appreciate what they're saying, and I sympathize with them. They're saying, my property is flooding, and this is going to make it worse because there's less green space there's less ground to soak up the water. It's more impervious surfaces. Those are just going to run off, and that's going to impact how much water is in that floodplain and how quickly the floodway can take it away.
So, yeah, there's a couple different things there. We will have structures in place to handle the release of the water into the drain during normal rain events. So it won't just be taken at full. If you have a rain event, it's not going at full flow right into the river. It's going to be restricted. That's one thing. But the second thing is that, again, I guess I go back to meeting all the regulations. You know, the whole goal of the FEMA program and the EAGLE program is to create no negative impacts to the 100-year floodplain. And although I think that I agree with these residents that there are more and more rain events that are that are elevating the 100-year floodplain. We're getting more of these rain events where the water's coming up and higher, and I think that's more of a factor of the environment and the type of rainfalls we've been getting lately, and not really the impact of these developments, because this floodplain program has been in place since 1983, and the whole point of the floodplain program is to make sure when you develop, you are not creating negative impacts on the current situation.
Can you, is the Clinton River flooding anywhere other than right next to the Chaldean Community Foundation's development?
I did look at it today. The water is up on Van Dyke, so the water is up before you even get to that parcel. The water is up downstream as well. So as you go to Riverland.
Is there anywhere where it's not up?
Not that I know of.
No, of course not. Of course not. The water is high everywhere. The water is high in the Red Run Drain next to 16 Mile in Utica. The water is high in the Clinton River. I was down by, what's that restaurant? Hook, you know, in St. Clair Shores. The water is high everywhere. I have huge backyard. I haven't turned my sprinklers on once this year. I haven't even turned them on. It's as green as it's ever been, okay? Most years, by this time, if I hadn't had my sprinklers on, the grass would be brown. It's just raining a lot. It's raining a ton, and I sympathize with you guys. I really do. But most of the folks who have come here to speak, your houses are literally backing up to Clinton River, okay? Your houses are on Clinton River. And so every waterway. If you could just Google Macomb County flooding, you will see week after week after week after week. All spring, all summer. Story after story after story after story. I've had golf canceled countless times this year because I can't get out because it's raining. And when it rains, it destroys the golf course. It's happening, folks. It's not something that has to do with the Chaldean Community Foundation's building. This is a phenomenon that's happening throughout Metro Detroit and frankly, throughout the country. That when weather is becoming more extreme and more extreme and more extreme, and that is the reality of it. So from everything I'm hearing from my city engineer, from the developer who's just gone through an 8-year process on that building right next door, this is going to be approved, if this gets approved tonight, which it won't, but if this eventually gets approved, that's not like, okay, it's over, it's done, right? It's over, let's go have a ribbon cutting and a groundbreaking next week, right? You have to go through a long process of getting the local, the state, and the federal approvals. So to me, I don't see this as, I've not seen any evidence, credible evidence whatsoever, that the development of the Chaldean Community Foundation's Phase 1 building, if you want to call it, has had any impact on the water that's in all of your backyards. That's how that backyard was designed. That's how your property was designed. Your property was designed to do that. That's the point. That's the point of, we had somebody from the watershed, right? I think it was it you, sir? That's what it's there for, right? That's what it's there for. That's what a floodplain does. So, I don't see any evidence that building this building is going. Okay, I didn't interrupt you. I don't know if maybe you didn't speak, but I appreciate that you not interrupt me because I can promise you that's not going to be helpful. Okay? Most of the issues that were brought up, most of the issues have to do with flooding. And I'm sympathetic. Again, I understand it. I totally get it. But I don't see the correlation because I trust that our city engineer and that Eagle and that FEMA is going to look at this and is not going to give the approval unless it fits within their guidelines. Look, I had a couple of questions, but I think I'm going to, no, I guess I will. So, Mr. Bonner, this estimation of the economic impact, I think there was one resident who said it's sort of like, works out to about $72,000 per unit. Can you talk about how those calculations are made? Is that a one-time economic impact? Is it an economic impact over a period of years? How does that?
Yeah, sure. It's on an annual basis, and it includes all spending typically, which is rent and utilities and any other living expenses, plus the anticipated spend on daily living expenses. So we use two different models. There's the National Multifamily Housing Council has a calculator on their website that isn't perfect, but we also have data from a source called Lightcast. So we really kind of put the two together, and it's a best guess estimate. We don't really know, obviously, until something's finished, and you can measure it after the fact, but that's how that was calculated.
Okay. Mr. Manna, do you have any estimate on how long it will take to obtain all, if it were approved tonight? Do you have any idea how long this process would take as opposed to the last one before you could be ready to break ground?
I could tell you that the Michigan State Housing Development Authority's pretty much already approved this project. It took them, they were the ones that took the 6 years prior. And so this one's already, we've gotten verbal commitment from them already.
Yeah,
And-
I miss your phone calls asking me if I know anybody at Mishka.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, Mr. came out to the site, their director did, and viewed the property. So we would just need to go through the Eagle and FEMA process. So it shouldn't take longer than 6 to 9 months.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I need anything else right now. Look, I want to also address the issue of the millage. And I look at this like, you know, we've been through a number of these apartment PUD developments. And a lot of times I hear, you know, they're too dense, whether it's from council members or from members of the public and neighbors. You know, they're too dense and they don't have enough recreational space for the residents here. Now, this is one where 80% of the property is being committed to green space, 80% of it. And to say, you know, we shouldn't, we're asking the residents, do you want to spend some money to acquire property that can be preserved as green space? I mean, I don't know, like, if let's say we just said, you know what, scrap the whole thing, let's keep this all green space, and we're just gonna, man, are we gonna put a park? Like, in one breath, I hear, the building is too close to the street. It's way too close, it's dangerous there, you can't have a building there. And then it's like, well, okay, so let's say we don't put a building there. What are we gonna put, swing sets there? Are we gonna put a playground right there? I don't think so. You know, I don't think we would be building a park, you know, right on the street either. So that frontage on the street, I think, is a perfect opportunity, a perfect place to say, to fit in with this corridor, we're going to put housing. We're going to put housing that's necessary. We're going to put a rent-controlled housing that will help with the affordability of housing in the city and beyond. And we're going to use 80% of the property and dedicate it to green space and public use. So I think it's I don't think it's fair to say, you know, we're being hypocritical by saying, hey, you know, why don't you guys authorize us to go out there and gobble up some property so that we don't have developments everywhere? It'd be one thing if this was a 2-acre parcel and the city was spinning it off to a developer to do a 2-acre development, but it's a 10-acre parcel. And 8 acres of it is going to be dedicated to public green space, which is exactly what the community has been saying they want. So to me, it's an elegant compromise. It's a compromise all across the board. I think it's important that we have density in that corridor to make it more walkable, to activate it, to make it something special, to make it a destination for people, a destination for businesses, a destination for residents, a destination for citizens who just want to live there. I think that the public is clamoring for more green space. We are dedicating the green space there, 8 acres of green space. And I think that, you know, people are asking, so Sterling Heights, more unique, distinctive corridors and areas, and that's what this will be. So to me, I see it as really a great compromise of a number of different things that the residents have been asking for, not to mention the affordable housing or just the housing component. So, I mean, I get it, and I understand your concerns. I sincerely do. The main thing I heard today was flooding. And how could you let this happen with all this flooding going on? I'm satisfied that the experts that we've talked to and the experts that will look at this before it gets final approval, they are there to protect you, to protect us, to protect the public. And like, you're all shaking your head. Okay. I am not an expert in engineering. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a civil engineer. I do not have an expertise in whether or not this project is going to cause your backyards to flood. I don't have that expertise. And with all due respect, Very few of you guys out there do either. There may be a handful of you that do, but most of you don't. So I am going to rely on the city engineer who's been doing this for a very long time, and I'm going to rely on Eagle, and I'm going to rely on FEMA, and I'm going to rely on the experts who have the training, have the background, have the understanding of what works and what doesn't work, and rely on them. Otherwise, I'm just throwing darts at a dartboard. Otherwise, I'm just listening. You know, there's 19 of you came out and spoke tonight. I can go find 19 people in the community that would tell me to vote to do this. Okay, so it's not about just who has the loudest voice. It's about who is presenting the evidence that makes the most sense, that's the most persuasive to me. And the evidence that I'm hearing from the professionals with the technical expertise and the training that I trust are saying this is not going to have the negative impact that people are claiming. So I'm going to be in support of it. I will support it. I think it's a really good project. I think it's just what we need in the North Van Dyke district. I think it'll be a great housing project for people in need of housing. And so I hope next week, or in 2 weeks, that this gets approved. 3 weeks, we get an extra week this week, or this month. Okay, I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Riska?
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Yanez, Mrs. Yarko,
Yes.
Mrs. Kosky,
No.
Mr. Radke.
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt,
No.
Mrs. Sarowski. No.
Okay, there is a tie vote, 3-3, and per our council rules, when there is a tie vote as a result of a council member being absent, it results in an automatic postponement to the next city council meeting. So this will be postponed until the August 6th. Is it August 7th? So we have no council meeting on Tuesday, August 6th, because of the
It's the 5th.
election.
Is it, what is it August 6th for the week, so it's the 7th?
Because
Okay.
Tuesday, yeah.
It's 10:16, why don't we come back at 10:25? Any issue with that? Nope. We'll stand in recess for about 10 minutes. Calling this meeting back to order. We, under our council rules, communications from citizens will start at 9:30 PM or as soon after. So we will jump the consent agenda and everything else, go right to communications from citizens. And is there anybody who'd like to speak under communications? Oh, Mrs. Marson, you're there.
Surprise, surprise.
Good evening. Listen, there's a couple of things since I'm here, and I'm not nervous anymore, to get off my mind. It's been bugging me for a long time. Dobry Drive, my favorite road, between Mound and Ryan. It's the road you want to take if you want to check to see if your fillings are loose. And I know that it's a service drive, and we're not in total control of it. Could you please do something about it, Mr. Vanderpool? I would appreciate it. I think the people that live and pay a lot of rent in that luxury senior facility would like it as well. But anyways, a couple of things too. The PUD, P-U-D, Planned Unit Development, I think is being grossly misused by this council and by this administration. The PUD was created back in the early 80s during my tenure as council. And it was created for the property located on the northwest property of 14 Mile and Van Dyke, the Danny Mancuso, as we know it, the gravel pit across the street from Mr. F's. The plan was to have light industry over by the tracks, hotel and office buildings, high-rise, some shopping in it as well as and restaurants. That's why it was called PUD, P-U-D, Planned Unit Development. So I think over the years, I'm sure that it has been amended and revised and blah, 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 blah. But to have this project or any other projects you have by Gallo, and by the way, wrong person, I thought it was Grillo, it's Gallo. I think it's being misused. You're misusing the PUD. And maybe it has to be looked at it and reviewed again to be more inconsistent what the original intent was. And let's see, there was something else, and I can't remember exactly what it is. You have to forgive me, my age does it. But there's one thing I want to give all of you a piece of advice. Seasoned politicians know when to stop with the pontification and stop the rhetoric, because then become jejune. So I would advise all politicians sitting here today to kind of like put a cap on it, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Marcinek. Anyone else under communications? Mr. Nelson. You guys don't listen to me anyway.
I called the DPW a couple of weeks ago or something. I had a hole in 15 Mile Road, and they did come and repair it. I don't understand what's going on with that road, because wherever the cement was, they left the cement, and when they dug it out, they added all asphalt. Well, in front of my house, you know, I got a hole, but I got cracks where it's fading. Somebody's got to fill them cracks in. You got to put some goo or something in there to stop the water from going in, because it's moving back and forth, and there's cracks all over. And then plus two, the Chaldeans, or not the Chaldeans, the Islams, I forgot. They got a pole that they had at the office. When they had the first building, they had an office right there, a trailer. They had electric pole. Well, the electric box, there's no face on it. It was duct tape. So it's open. So I don't know if anybody wants to get fried or what, or tap in, one of the two.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
then plus-
pardon me, sir. There are people talking in the audience. It's making it very hard to hear the speaker.
Yeah, hold on.
hear nobody.
Mary and Jerry, can you guys keep it down, please? Thank you.
I'm Marcinek again. What a trip. He's glad to see her. And Jerry, he's classy too. I haven't seen him in years. We did a lot of work together with the Clausen people and all that. Ooh, we had a good time. And you and that sidewalk, I get a kick out of that. You want sidewalks here, you want sidewalks here, you want caps on the dumpsters, you want dumpsters and that. the city came, or the garbage guy came, I had a tree fall. I called the city, they don't mess with it because it's on private property. But the garbage guy come, he took the took the can, but I had stumps, and it says in that book, they'll take 6-inch things, but he didn't take nothing. He said, I'll be back. Well, I'm still waiting for him, and that was today. So I don't know what's going on with that. Because, and then there was some that, it just happened. It's hard to bind. I'm getting too old too, like Mary. I'm getting too old for this. I need another dumpster, but I ain't buying no dumpster. I'll have to use the bags, right? Okay, that's all I got. But check that meter out. Somebody's gonna fry.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Nelson.
Ken Nelson, Fire Steel, Sterling Heights. Just have a question about, you're going to be having a look at Mr. Gallo at Van Dyke, and that's not on tonight's, right? Okay, that's all right. So Mr. Gallo is coming up with 193 units again on Van Dyke and north of 15. But all of a sudden, he's not worried about anything because now he is going to be approved as a special land use. What is going on there? You are making amendments to that agreement for that whole Van Dyke corridor, and one of them is to amend the special land use. Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. You better look into that. It gives the authority to the Planning Commission to determine if they need to abide by the the mixed-use capabilities. So you need to look at that. That's coming up. That one will be fought. That's another 193 units. How does he go through? Did it through a PUD, had all kinds of problems, was turned down, and then right after that, he comes back under a special land use. Better have a lot of explaining to do that night. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anybody else under communications from citizens? Yes, sir?
Hi, my name's Peter Watson. I've been coming since I was 14 or 15, so 5-6 years, but I've only talked once. Today I almost saw an accident at Dodge Park in Plumbrook, and this has been something I've wanted to talk about for years. I just haven't had the courage to. I used to walk to Davis for school and then the IB program at Heritage. So 6 years walking that intersection, going on lights, people turn on red. I've almost been hit a dozen times, and I see it once a week. I think the city should look into putting a no turn on red sign on all 4 corners of that intersection, because now with that bike lane, there's even more traffic every day, and it's a highly traversed area for pedestrians.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Shea.
Jerry Shea, Sterling Heights. First question I have, people have been asking me, I want to know what we paid for that mural in Riverland on the Zap Zone. That's a beautiful Picasso, so I was just wondering how much we paid for that beautiful work of art. I'm being facetious. I was just really I like the other murals, but this one's a little different. I'd like to know what the timetable is on the Clinton River Road Bridge, if it's on schedule. And I like the idea that you're building sidewalks across there. That's a good idea. It's been a long time coming. You're talking about Van Dyke, between the roundabout up to, up Van Dyke. What is going on with that banquet hall? That banquet hall, they've been building that forever. I mean, I could have built that banquet hall and had it open. So people are asking me about the banquet hall, and I told them, I said, I have no idea. And lastly, 17 Mile Bridge, when is that scheduled to open? because with Sterling Fest and everything else going on, people were asking me when it's going, because it seems like they've been working on it a long time, and that's not a very big bridge to work on, unless they ran into problems. So if you can answer those questions, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shea. Anybody else under communications? Ms. Catula?
Hello. I wasn't going to speak today, just came actually in support of the development. But I did write some notes down because the residents did make some, good points, and I just wanted to maybe put my opinion in and what I thought.
So just before you get started, so this portion of our meeting is
Yes.
about anything that was not on the agenda
Oh,
today.
okay. I didn't know.
So
All right.
you're welcome to
can-
speak for 4 minutes about literally anything else.
Well, okay, well, then maybe I could just talk about the flooding, because when you talk about my backyard, I mean, my kids, I have 6 kids, my kids enjoyed all the water coming through, because it's so deep back there, 15 feet, and in the winter, when it dries up, they like to go sledding. But I just assume this is just part of, when I moved to Sterling Heights 37 years ago, I've been a resident for 37 years, that kind of everywhere, like, it was a farm, I live right across the street from the mushroom farm, and, Grissom was right next door, and always playing soccer out there, and, flooding is, especially when this, like you said, this summer has been so much rain, coming down, that the floods are everywhere. I'm not saying, at the property, but they talked about that. I just wanted to mention that about the floods, and if you can figure it out, come over to my backyard and help us figure that out too.
You got it. All right, thank you, Ms. Catula. Mr. Byland?
Yes, Steve Billen. What I'm talking about is about the sidewalk program. I mean, right now, they're in my area, which I'm glad. It's been decades that they were. I've already talked to the engineering numerous times. What they told me was they originally looked at pictures and decided which sidewalks needed repairing. So I said, okay, no problem. Well, the ones they marked are the ones from pictures, but I'm looking down the street, and they're ones that are worse than mine that are not marked. So I'd like the city to reevaluate Kidley Drive and to make sure all of them are done. I know they're saying that the gap, they can't have more than half an inch of a gap. And I know there are some that have more than half an inch that are not marked. And bottom line is what they did is they took the photos, marked what the photos said to do, and that's all they did. So there's other ones that does need to be addressed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anybody else under communications from citizens? All right, I'll close that portion, and we'll go back to the agenda. We left off with the consent agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on any item on tonight's consent agenda? Not, council, we need a motion. Are you coming up, sir?
Okay, E, 4 trucks, pickup trucks. Is that for the DPW? That's $253,000. That's almost, what, 60,000 apiece? That's some nice trucks. And, G, wood chipper. What kind of wood chipper is that? And, I thought you guys farmed out the snow plowing. You want to buy a Polaris. That's $31,000. And the one that really kicks me is a purchase of a pipe hunter. Is that a guy that wants to go around looking for pipes or something? I don't know. Because that's almost $70,000 for that guy. And have a nice day.
All right, thank you, you too. Anyone else on the consent agenda, Mr. Shea?
I just have a question. I've never seen this before. and I've been to a lot of meetings. Number C, to approve a Michigan State subdivision agreement for the allocation of a Kroger settlement agreement. I didn't have a chance to read the backup or something, but what Krogers or what's going on, if you can answer that? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shea. Anyone else? Council, we need a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Kosky.
move to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is a consideration item. This is to consider approval of a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Sterling Heights and Teamsters Local 214 Department of Public Works Field Unit employees for the period of July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2028. Presentation from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Mayor, thank you. As you mentioned, this is the agreement involving the field employees. You recently approved a similar agreement with the supervisory employees in DPW, so I'll summarize this just briefly. First, due to wage trends both in the unionized private and public sectors, the city focused on making sure that its wage structure placed it in a very competitive position with the market. This was important not only for retention, but also recruitment efforts. And I don't want to belabor that point. Everyone knows what's going on in the labor market. So with that in mind, this proposal reflects increases to the starting wage for all job classifications, increases to the top step for all job classifications, and also reducing the number of steps in the time period in which it takes someone to move through the classifications. In addition to that, the new scale will result in a base wage increase the first year of 10%. So these groups got caught in the inflationary market whereby they saw significant slippage based on comparables in the marketplace. So the 10% is in essence an equity adjustment to deal with the inflationary forces that we've experienced. Then the remaining 3 years will be wage increases of 1%, 1.5%, 1.5% the final 2 years. The defined contribution plan is increasing, consistent with the other agreements, from 5.5% to 10% in year 4. Again, that is consistent with the marketplace. That does also require an employee match as well. City's annual contribution to the post-employment health plan will be increasing from $2,000 to $2,500. Most importantly, we feel very good about this. The city will be offering an annual health assessment incentive. As you may know, the city self-insures for medical costs and our coverage for employees because we're large enough to do that. So this health assessment incentive will encourage individuals to use our center downstairs to continue good, healthy lifestyles. We will provide an incentive of $750 for the member and $500 for the member's spouse to undergo an annual physical and health risk assessment, again, in our city's health center. This is obviously good to keep employees in good health. It also helps reduce our healthcare costs and overall is a best practice. So we're pleased to offer this in the new agreement. All the other provisions in the agreement remain at the levels in the expiring CBA, so there's no other changes. And so I wanted to once again acknowledge the good faith exhibited by the DPW field union leadership in negotiating the new CBA and the good work of our city's negotiating team led by Assistant City Manager Jeff Bahorsky that resulted in the tentative agreement that's before you this evening. And with all that in mind and knowing it's consistent with the other agreements that you've approved, I respectfully request your approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? Council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mr. Radke, I think, gotcha.
That's fine. Resolve to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Sterling Heights and Teamsters Local 214 Department of Public Works Field Unit employees for the period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2028, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend Assistant City Manager Bohorsky and the DPW Field Unit for coming to an agreement. This echoes some of our other agreements. I'm excited about the healthcare incentive. I think it's important that our employees are getting physicals and getting assessed, but I also think it's a great way to show off our clinic that we have in the basement here and what it can do for our employees. I'm happy to support this agreement. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next up is a consideration item. This is to consider appointments to the City of Sterling Heights boards and commissions. Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, council, it looks like we have one appointment. This is an open appointment. This is a council appointment to a partial term ending June 30th, 2029 to the Board of Code Appeals. Is there anyone who has a appointment?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
resolve to appoint Imad Potras to the Board of Code Appeals to a term ending June 30th, 2029, with the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subsection 4.03, taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Geez, a partial term ends in 5 years. I wish that was council. Mayor was. Mr. Radke, any
Yes,
discussion?
thank you. Mr. Potras is already on the board. He's an alternate. He wants to be moved up to a full member. He's an architect and has served faithfully. I have no problem promoting him.
Understood. Council, anyone else? With no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, that concludes that portion of our agenda tonight. We obviously already had communications from citizens, so we will move on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool, anything tonight?
Mayor, I can respond quickly on a few of the comments from residents under citizen comments. First, Dobry Drive will be resurfaced next construction season, so 2025. We will follow up on some of an individual brought up a collection issue regarding stumps. We'll follow up on that. We'll take a look at Dodge Park Road in Plumbrook and look at the traffic data there and accident data to determine if no right turns are needed in that area. Ultimately, the traffic and accident data will determine that. The mural cost, that was one of our largest murals, was just over $30,000. It's consistent with the lineal footage of the other murals in the city that we've completed. The 17-mile bridge will be completed this summer. We hope it's open back up by the end of summer, so very soon. An individual had a concern about sidewalks. If he would like to email me, I believe you have my email address. We can take a look at the squares and make sure we're on the same page with that. On the consent agenda, item E pertains to 4 trucks. We get a very good deal on these. They are in the DPW department. They range in cost from $61,000 to $72,000. These are F-250s, so they're very good costs, heavy-duty trucks that are used extensively for plowing roads. And item G, let me take a quick look at it. That's a simple wood chipper that we use in our Parks and Rec department specifically and other purposes in the city with all of our trailway systems and other areas that we need it. Item C regarding the Kroger item is a settlement agreement regarding opioid settlement distributions to communities, in this case Sterling Heights. All that agenda material is available to the general public, including those who spoke this evening. Simply go online and you'll get the full backup and you can get much more detailed information. Simply go to sterlingheights.gov, go to city council meeting, look at the agenda for tonight, and you can pull it up. It's all nicely bookmarked, and it's a lot of good information. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Koszybski, anything?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Council reports, new business?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
I just wanted to follow on to what Mr. Vanderpool said. You know, I think it's fun when residents come up here and cherry pick what they think are expensive purchases off the consent agenda. And I will correct the city manager, that one of those trucks was an F-350, because we use them for snow plowing. It's a very common thing. We have a program which says essentially where our cars are in their mileage and their year and their use, and where they need to be repaired. And when our program says that they have to be replaced, we replace them. That's why we're replacing trucks. The Polaris is simply a vehicle to plow the trails. We get complaints from residents that they can't access the parks after a snowfall because the trails are not passable. We found that some of the trails are very tight, and we can't put a full-size truck. It damages the trail. So we bought a Polaris to plow the trails. There's nothing nefarious going on here. The pipe hunter sidetrack, if you had read your backup, would essentially be a way to get hosing and pipes for sewer drain and sewer work in people's backyards easier into the backyards because it can travel through gates. Right now, we have to take down fences to access the backyard, or we have to haul hoses. This is a way to access people's backyards to make repairs to the DPW. That's all this stuff is. But if you come prepared, you'd know and you'd read. But people don't, and they just make it out like, well, that's an expensive purchase. Well, the costs are going up. Cars are expensive. I don't know what to tell folks. I mean, it is what it is. We buy them at what is actually a very cheap rate compared to what the public gets, because we use a purchasing system and shared contracts to lower our costs. So that's all I have to say. I look forward to Sterling Fest. I think it's going to be a tremendous time. I invite everyone to come join us. It's one of the best events in the city. I think everyone enjoys it. I know that we have a plan to not only keep people safe, but also to have a lot of fun. So I hope folks will join us there, and you'll probably find me wandering around eating something, I assume. So I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Radke again. And I want everybody to come out and have fun at Sterling Fest, but I really want you to come out and vote. And that starts on July the 27th for early vote, or for the primary and early voting. So I really, if you see me, I'm going to probably ask you, did you vote yet? Did you vote yet? I voted early the last election. It's really easy to do. And if you're following your ballot, it counts. It was easy, efficient, and I can't say much else, but I'm hoping we get a lot of people on the 27th when Sterling Fest is going on, where they can just walk over and vote for the primary. I think that would be good to encourage people, on that Saturday. So come to Sterling Fest and vote same time. How easy.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Mrs.
Thank you,
Goski.
Mr. Mayor. I'm going to add to Mrs. Sarko's vote. I am tonight. Thank you.
There you go.
Right. Mrs. Schmidt, Sarowski, anything tonight?
Szymanski.
I said Schmidt, Sarowski.
Schmidt, okay. Wow. Yes, thank you, Mayor Taylor. So to piggyback on all of them, so yes, at Sterling Fest, look forward to seeing you all. And the one thing that was very interesting is that there's the CPR training, and we often do our survivor coins, and the thing that people survive, why they survive is because they had CPR training by our firefighters or their family members. This is going to give you a chance to save a family member or a good friend. So come out when you're at Sterling Fest, spend that extra half hour to an hour. It isn't that long to learn how to do CPR and to get certified. So when you're there having fun, take that extra time and learn how to do CPR. And I hope you do. Thank you very much.
All right.
That's all I have.
Mrs. Sarowski, and you would know, you are a nurse.
I do know that, yeah.
Anything
Mrs. Schmidt is a trainer.
I'm a trainer, that's right. I think they're doing just hands-only CPR.
Probably, yeah, they are. They're doing the new hands-only one.
Anyway, Mayor, I wanted to let you know you don't have to sing happy birthday to me this year because it's the day after Sterling Fest, but I hope everybody comes out and enjoys the party for 3 days. And I'm
So
looking.
it's Sunday?
It's Sunday.
Okay, you're gonna get it at like 4 in the morning then. after the after party.
Okay, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I answer.
No, I'm gonna. You're
still gonna be
You're
there.
gonna still be there. We're
Oh,
gonna keep
okay.
partying all night long. I'm gonna definitely see you after midnight, so. There's still be
Anyway,
happy
weather
birthday.
looks good, so come on out and spend some money and have some fun and meet your neighbors. It's a great place to meet your neighbors. So, that's it.
Okay, thank you, guys. Really looking forward to Sterling Fest as well. Hope to see you out there. Our favorite weekend every year. So let's hope that we don't have the weather that we have been having lately, and we get some dry days. But with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, support.
Moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.